Au pair affair. Oh man, you can hear it in my voice. Still a little sleepy over here. Woke up at like 5:45 a.m. But the court started kind of late. Well, I guess if I went back to watch the footage, she did say 10. So for some reason, I was following Court TV's like scheduled stream, which they said it was 9. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just wake up early then. But oh well. Hi Joe, how are you doing today? Hello, hello. So right now they're gonna go over the jury instructions and then we'll start our closing arguments. State's gonna go first and then the defense. And oh my goodness, I went back and I watched day 6. That was the day that I missed for some reason. And oh my gosh, day 6, like I feel like it was the defense's case in chief, but I feel like they completely destroyed themselves with the witnesses that they were putting on the stand. Oh my goodness. I know that they were trying to show that there was like inner turmoil within the homicide unit, that they didn't half the people didn't agree with the catfishing theory. And then out of the 12 people that were in the homicide unit, only 4 were left on the case. And it really made it seem like, oh, the people that were in the higher ups were doing these shady things to push this narrative that like it was for sure catfishing, just so they can get Juliana, just so they can get Brendan. And they didn't care about the evidence, that they ignored everything. But no, that's not what happened. It wasn't that kind of like weird corruption. Yeah, there were some people that had disagreement. There's one guy who apparently didn't follow the evidence, and they're like, yeah, we're booting you. But everyone else seemed to follow in with the catfish theory once they got the blood splatter analysis, and then once Juliana changed her story and then like turned Brennan in. So what a mess. I don't know what the defense was thinking. And then like day 7 was the day that I thought was like the worst for the defense. I was like, no, day 6 was, because day 7 was when it was like completely disorganized and they were putting witnesses on the stand, taking them off the stand, back and forth. And oh my gosh, day 6 was, I think, the most disastrous. And then of course, when he went up there and testified, that was quite, I didn't think it was good for the defense either. Hi, Shirley. How are you doing today? Hey, artist. Hey, Yoked. Good morning. Good morning. All right, guys, let's listen to the jury instructions. And then, oh, by the way, new video for Corey Richards is out. Another allegation of witness intimidation. You guys haven't seen it yet. I posted it yesterday, so feel free to check it out later on or while we're in our break today. So I'm going to hop in to court. And good morning. We are in Fairfax, Virginia, and I think it is very, very cold over there. Hi, Joe. How are you doing today? How's it going? Hello. Hi, Taxi. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I got my cup of warm water here. It is a little chilly this morning. All right, let's do this. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm going to move my windows up a little bit here. Actually, I'll put this over here. How is everyone? What are we thinking so far? What do you guys think about the defense's case?
Door open every time you come back. I really appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you now have heard all the evidence in this case. All right, before the lawyers make their closing arguments, the court will give you the instructions of the law that you are to apply in deciding this case. Since it's been quite a while since I gave you the preliminary instructions, I want to remind you that in their closing arguments, the lawyers will refer to the testimony and other evidence that you will have heard, but what the lawyers say in their closing arguments is not itself evidence. Their statements are only their recollection of what the evidence in the case was. It is your collective recollection as 12 jurors of what the evidence in this case was, which shall govern your deliberations. In addition, remember your notes should be used only as an aid to your memory. You should not give your notes precedence over your independent recollection of the evidence, and you should rely on your independent recollection of what the evidence in the case was, and you should not be unduly influenced by the notes of other jurors. In addition, it's a reminder that the court has sealed the names of the jurors for a year. Just wanted to make sure I remind you of that. Okay, as far as the jury instructions are involved, you'll be able to take these written jury instructions into the jury room with you, and we'll make copies for all 12 jurors, okay? So you don't need to take notes on them right now, but I would ask for your attention when I read them, okay? With respect to the instructions I'm about to give, you might notice that at the top of them, some of them are numbered and some of them are lettered. You not have to concern yourself with that. You're just looking at the body of the instruction themselves, okay?
Hi, Rain. How are you doing today? Do you see Twitch, or not Twitch, YouTube? Look at what they did to your username. You're not the original Rain anymore. Hello, hello.
Some of the instructions may appear to be in conflict. This is because the court cannot predict your findings of fact. Therefore, the court must instruct you, the jury, on the applicable law under both the Commonwealth's case and the defendant's theory of the case, okay? Brendan Banfield is presumed to be innocent. You should not assume that he is guilty because he has been charged and is on trial. This presumption of innocence remains with him throughout the trial and is enough to require you to find him not guilty unless and until the Commonwealth proves each and every element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. This does not require proof beyond all possible doubt, nor is the Commonwealth required to disprove every conceivable circumstance of innocence. However, suspicion or probability of guilt is not enough for conviction. There is no burden on Brendan Banfield to produce any evidence. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based on your sound judgment after a full and impartial consideration.
Yeah, there's no burden for Brendan to produce evidence, but oh my gosh, if you're gonna go after the victim and say that she was into this fetish kink and she was the one who created the apps, not the au pair and not the defendant in this case, then we were hoping to see evidence that Christine really was indeed into this, or Christine really was the one who was also having affairs. There's a lot that was being hyped from the defense's side, and I was like, ooh, like I hope you like sort of live up to it, and I just feel like they didn't. I mean, if you're gonna push out these like crazy stories, I feel like there's gotta be like a little bit something there.
Of all the evidence in the case. Any fact that may be proved by direct evidence may also be proved by circumstantial evidence. That is, you may draw all reasonable conclusions from the evidence. You may convict Brendan Banfield on circumstantial evidence alone, or on circumstantial evidence combined with other evidence if you believe from all the evidence that he is guilty beyond reasonable doubt. When the Commonwealth relies upon circumstantial evidence, the circumstances proved must be consistent with guilt and inconsistent with innocence. It is not sufficient that the circumstances proved create a suspicion of guilt, however strong, or even a probability of guilt. The evidence as a whole must exclude every reasonable theory of innocence. You are the judges of the facts, the credibility of the witnesses, and the weight of the evidence. You may consider the appearance and manner of the witnesses on the stand, their intelligence, their opportunity for knowing the truth and for having observed the things about which they testified, their interest in the outcome of the case, their bias, and if any has been shown, their prior inconsistent statements, or whether they have knowingly testified untruthfully as to any material fact in the case. You may not arbitrarily disregard believable testimony of a witness. However, after you've considered all the evidence in the case, then you may accept or discard all or part of the testimony of a witness as you think proper. You are entitled to use your common sense in judging any testimony. From these things and all the other circumstances of the case, you may decide which witnesses are more believable and weigh their testimony accordingly. If you believe from the evidence that a witness other than Brendan Banfield previously made a statement inconsistent with his testimony at this trial, the only purpose for which that statement may be considered by you is for its bearing on the witness's credibility. It is not evidence that what the witness previously said is true. The defendant is charged with the crime of aggravated murder. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements of that crime. Number one, that the defendant killed Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. And number two, that the killings were willful, deliberate, and premeditated. And number three, that the killings occurred within a 3-year period. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt each of the above elements of the crime is charged, then you shall find the defendant guilty of the aggravated murder of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt any of the elements of the crime, then you shall find the defendant not guilty. The defendant is charged with the crime of aggravated murder. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements of that crime. Number one, that the defendant killed Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. And number two, that the killings were willful, deliberate, and premeditated. And number three, that the killings occurred as part of the same act or transaction. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt each of the above elements of the crime as charged, then you shall find the defendant guilty of the aggravated murder of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt any of the elements of the crime, then you shall find the defendant not guilty. Willful, deliberate, and premeditated means a specific intent to kill adopted at some time before the killing, but which need not exist for any particular length of time. A willful act is one done with a bad purpose or without justifiable excuse, or without ground for believing it is lawful. A willful act is intentional, or knowing, or voluntary, as distinguished from accidental. The terms bad purpose or without justifiable excuse require knowledge that the particular conduct will likely result in injury or illegality. To prove the charge of murder, the Commonwealth does not have to prove a motive for the killing. The presence or absence of a motive may be considered in arriving at your verdict. Brendan Banfield is charged with the
Oh, I mean, we can assume what the motive was. It's quite clear in this one.
crime of using a firearm while committing or attempting to commit murder. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements of that crime. Number one, that Brendan Banfield used a firearm. And number two, that the use occurred while Brendan Banfield was committing or attempting to commit murder. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt each of the above elements of the crime as charged, then you shall find Brendan Banfield guilty. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt either or both of the elements of the crime, then you shall find Brendan Banfield not guilty. A firearm is any instrument that is capable of expelling a projectile by force or gunpowder. A firearm is also an object that is not capable of expelling a projectile by force or gunpowder, but gives the appearance of being able to do so. The existence of a firearm may be proved by circumstantial evidence, direct evidence, or both. Brendan Banfield is charged with the crime of child endangerment. The Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt the following elements of that crime. Number one, that Brendan Banfield had custody of Valerie Banfield, who was a child under the age of 18. And number two, that he willfully or negligently caused or permitted the life of such child to be endangered. If you find from the evidence that the Commonwealth has proved
Yeah, Judge Penny is going through the jury instructions quite quickly, but I guess because she's like used to reading this, I just assume you guys didn't really care about jury instructions. I could slow down a bit.
beyond a reasonable doubt both of the above elements of the crime as charged, then you shall find Brendan Banfield guilty of child endangerment. If you find that the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt either or both of the elements of the crime, then you shall find Brendan Banfield not guilty. The fact that Brendan Banfield has been indicted by a grand jury is not
Interesting. Child endangerment. What do you guys think about that one? Daughter was in the basement. What did you think the daughter would be in the basement locked with the dog? The dog that was apparently barking or moaning or groaning or howling on the 911 call?
evidence against him, and you should not consider it.
Hi, Aaron.
If there is concert of action with a resulting crime, one of its incidental probable consequences, then whether such crime was originally contemplated or not, all who participated in any way in bringing it about are equally answerable and bound by the acts of every other person connected with the consummation of such resulting crime. You must not consider any matter that was rejected or stricken by the court. It is not evidence and should be discarded.
That's hard. Okay, that's hard. Because sometimes when you hear something, it's hard to unhear it, and then later on it's hard to parse out, wait a second, which one was I not supposed to take it into account again? That's a tough one.
You may infer that every person intends the natural and probable consequences of his acts. The Commonwealth bears the burden of proving beyond reasonable doubt the identity of the defendant as the person who committed the crimes charged. If the Commonwealth has not met this burden, you must find the defendant not guilty. You may consider the character of the defendant when proven by the evidence, whether good or bad, along with the other factors and circumstances in the case in determining his guilt or innocence. The statements presented to you as having been made by the defendant are submitted for your consideration along with all the other evidence. The weight, value, credibility, and reliability of those statements are questions for your determination. If you believe from the evidence that the defendant previously made a statement inconsistent with his testimony at this trial, that previous statement may be considered by you as proof that what the defendant previously said is true. Juliana Perez Magales has testified that she was an accomplice in the commission of the crime charged in the indictment. While you may find your verdict upon her uncorroborated testimony, you should consider such testimony with great care, and you are cautioned as to the danger of convicting the defendant upon the uncorroborated testimony of an accomplice. Nevertheless, if you are satisfied from the evidence of the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt, the defendant may be convicted upon the uncorroborated evidence of an accomplice. If you believe that the defendant was without fault in provoking or bringing on the killing of Joseph Ryan, and if you further believe that the defendant reasonably feared under the circumstances that they appeared to him, that he or others were in danger of being killed, or that he or others were in danger of great bodily harm, then the killing was in self-defense and you should find the defendant not guilty. The defendant contends that he acted in defense of another person. Under Virginia law, this defense is governed by the same principles that apply to self-defense. Number one, burden of proof. If the evidence raises a reasonable doubt as to whether the defendant acted in lawful defense of another, the jury must find him not guilty. Number two, reasonable belief of imminent danger. The defendant must have had a reasonable belief that the person he sought to protect was in imminent danger of bodily harm. All right, closing arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Self-defense, imminent danger.
And if we can have the display for the jury activated from our table, and it does include sealed exhibits, so we'd ask it not be displayed to the gallery.
Just to the jury and not
Yes,
to the
please.
gallery.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess the reason why they weren't showing exhibits on the stream was because maybe it was too hard to differentiate which one was sealed, which one wasn't. So they just like erred on the side of caution and just didn't show much. Hello, Alice. Good morning, Caitlin. Hello, hello. How are you? All right, state closing argument. Got a poll up, guys.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you
Good morning.
so much, not just for what you're going to do today, but for all of the time that you have spent carefully considering the evidence that we've been able to put before you, for the attention that you've paid, for the notes that you've taken, for the time that you've given up away from your daily lives, your jobs, and your families. Without your work here, Christine, Banfield, and Joseph Ryan would not be able to find justice. So thank you. The judge has read the instructions to you. They'll go back to the jury room with you, and you're going to have those as your guide in making your decision. I would draw your attention to the fact that you've been given 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of use of a firearm in commission of murder, and 1 count of child endangerment. Talking first about the aggravated murder instructions. They have 3 parts. You'll first need to find that Brendan Banfield killed Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. You'll need to find that those killings were willful, deliberate, and premeditated. You'll need to find for one of the counts that those 2 murders occurred within a 3-year period, and for the other count, that those 2 murders occurred within the same transaction or occurrence. We know that they were killed during the same event within the Banfield residence, so that should knock that one out for you. 3 years, pretty simple as well. We know that they occurred on the same day.
Yeah.
It's the first element we're going to talk about, that Brendan Banfield killed both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. We know that on February 24th, 2023, he executed his plan to murder his wife and an innocent stranger. He was in love with Juliana. He can pretend that this was a fling, an affair. He'd had them before, no big deal. He was in love with Juliana. He was afraid of losing her. He needed to get rid of his wife so that they could be together, so that they could marry, so that they could have those babies that he was picking out names for. Juliana told us how the plan was crafted
And I think still in love because he was still protecting her on the stand.
and how it played out that morning in the Banfield house. But you've heard directly from our detectives and our experts the uncontradicted evidence of Brendan Banfield's culpability. You needn't rely only on Juliana's story. There has been a plethora of evidence to help you meet your burden in this case. Let's walk through just the highlights. Our digital evidence. While the digital evidence cannot tell us definitively who was behind the screen, we heard that a bunch. We know that to be true. What it can tell us is that Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magales are more likely to be the ones to have set up Joe Ryan to come into the house to fake rape Christine on February 24th. There is no digital history, none, of Christine Banfield using dating sites, fetish sites, searching for pornography, talking.
Yep, they went as far back as like mid 2000s. I think that's what the detective said, and he was like, he couldn't find any like porn sites that she was like searching. There was like a lack of, actually,
to other men prior to the January inception of this scheme. Brendan told you that more than 10 years ago, there were incidents of affairs involving rough sex, but you have zero evidence to corroborate that self-serving statement.
Yep. He was like, oh, you know, she had bruises on her legs. She had bruises on her arms. I asked her about it. We had to get therapy for her. We had to get her into counseling, making her seem like she's the one that's the issue here.
Think about the 2 days of Mr. Lidsky's testimony for the defense and the 3 times that Detective Miller was called to this stand.
The disaster of the defense witnesses going back and forth, off the stand, on the stand. Oh, man. Remind the jury that, yeah, because the jury's probably like, what is happening here? Are you wasting our time?
Defense. And the 3 times that Detective Miller was called to this stand. If there was one scintilla of evidence that supported these claims of infidelity, of interest in sexual violence, don't you think you might have heard about it?
Yeah. Yep.
The FetLife and Telegram contacts all occur on Christine's laptop, frequently while her phone is in use with something completely innocuous. You remember the frozen tickets, the Lululemon shopping, the family vacations the day before the murder? 2 devices, 2 different people. The FetLife and Telegram usage only ever occurred when Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magales are in the home. Is it at all plausible that this woman wouldn't take advantage of an empty house to engage in her plans for adultery? That on the 2 weekends that her husband and the nanny are out of the house, those are the 2 weekends where we see 0 FetLife activity, 0 Telegram activity?
Yep.
Let's look at the chats themselves. Slide 1. How many potential targets were turned down by Juliana and Brendan because they wanted to meet in person first? Because they wanted to talk on the phone? Because they wanted pictures that included Christine's face?
Yep.
Does this make any sense for someone seeking a new relationship in an area of sexual exploration that would be new to them? Why would the real Christine Banfield have been concerned about taking these safety precautions? For that matter, why would the real Christine Banfield have been searching for someone who was willing to engage in knife play when she had a blood clotting disorder?
Yeah.
Why would Christine use a phone from a gym bathroom, a photo from a phone taken in a gym bathroom when she has all of these far better pictures available? That one keeps stumping us.
Right? You would take a selfie. It would be like a lot cuter, nicer angle. It wouldn't just be like, hey, it's me in a, bathroom, in a gym bathroom. I mean, like, it made more sense that she was just sending that picture to her husband to show off like her bathing suit or something,
There are so many more whys, and I'm sure you have plenty of them in your own heads, but the answer is the same to all of these whys, because it wasn't Christine. It was Brendan Banfield with the help of Juliana. Let's talk about our physical evidence. You heard from Detective Leach, Dr. Kessler, Ms. McCarthy, Dr. Greenspoon, Ms. Colombo. She was up there forever with all those lab sheets. They gave us a million things to think about. Slide 4. Christine Banfield died as a result of 7 stab wounds to her neck. She suffered massive blood loss. Next, the knife Brendan used to kill her was a kitchen knife with an approximately 4-inch blade, the kind you use for chopping up vegetables. This was the knife that Joe Ryan brought because Anastasia asked him to. This was not the killing knife that Brendan Banfield had envisioned for his scheme.
Yep. It wasn't like your typical pointy knife. It had like a nice like curve, like kind of like blunted in the front. Like she said, used for like chopping vegetables.
Next, Joe Ryan was shot twice. Once in the head by Brendan Banfield, incapacitating him. A second time by Juliana in the chest, tearing a large hole through his heart and lodging in his spine. His wounds were rapidly fatal, according to Dr. Kessler, and we saw that there was little to no blood from the chest wound. Iris Daly-Graf told you that he would have been incapable of movement following that second shot. Next. We saw evidentiary confirmation of the affair. Next. Iris Daly-Graf told you that he would have been incapable of movement following that second shot.
It's Joe Ryan.
We saw evidentiary confirmation of the affair. The semen stains on Juliana's bed sheets. We also saw the photos of Juliana's clothing moved into the primary bedroom when the search warrant was executed in October following the murders.
Yeah, they took the bed sheets of Juliana's and tested for semen, and guess whose semen was all over it? The defendants.
We saw the photos of Brendan and Juliana together, both before and after the murders. Her photos from her Instagram, their family photos in the bedroom after the murder. We saw the records from the shooting range for the purchase of the gun and the training of Juliana to shoot it.
Yep, shooting range.
We saw the deactivation of the automatic locking feature on the front door at 5:47 a.m. the morning of the murders, done from Christine's phone by the person who knew how the locking system operated, Brendan Banfield.
However, when Christine, in quotation marks, was texting Joe Ryan that morning, apparently there was no other activity on her phone. No browsing, nothing else. It's almost as if someone took her phone just with the purpose of, or was it was either her phone or her computer, I'm not quite sure, but either took one of her devices with the purpose of only communicating with Joe Ryan, and then later on taking her phone to unlock the door and then disabling the auto lock feature. But nothing else, no other activity on the phone.
We saw Christine's phone turned off at 6:46 a.m. and hidden in a drawer in a bar table in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
This is just not where you keep your phone. This is not where we heard that this woman kept her phone. This is not where a person who's about to engage in potentially risky behavior puts her source of help. A floor away, turned off, in a drawer, off to the side of the kitchen. Just doesn't make sense. We saw Brendan Banfield drive to McDonald's and hang out, waiting for the call from Juliana.
He was in the bathroom for like 7 minutes, okay? I mean, maybe he was blowing it up, or maybe he was just waiting until, the au pair would give him the call to say, hey, the stranger's finally here. All right, you come in and like you pretend to rescue. And then also apparently when he got the phone call, she pointed out that you weren't really in a rush to leave, right? It seems like you were just like walking out of the bathroom. And he was like, well, at that point, I didn't think it was anything dangerous. I just thought she was having an affair again. It's like, okay, well, if you thought she was having an affair again, why would you bring the au pair and your 4-year-old daughter to the scene? Just tell them to continue their journey to the zoo and don't worry about it. I'll handle it. A lot of things that just don't make sense.
We see their call records, 10 and 11, between Juliana, Christine's phone, which is turned off, Brendan, Christine's phone, which is turned off. They're creating a record. It's a plan. It is premeditated.
Yep.
We see this false attempt to check in on Christine so that they can tell the story to the police when they arrive that they did everything they possibly could. Next, we see the lock at the top of the basement door that Brendan Banfield did not think to engage to protect his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Even under his own version of this event, he agrees he didn't think about it. He left his 4-year-old child in the basement with guns out, stranger in the house, and something happening that caused him to be concerned. We heard the 911 calls. We have a hang up at 7:47 with Joe moaning in the background.
Yep.
And then a 15-minute gap before anyone calls 911 back. 8:02, 15 minutes between when someone in that house thought the police should be there and when they finally asked for help.
The au pair said that at 7:47, that's when Christine, Joe had already been shot. And then Christine was like, oh my God, Brendan, what did you do? Call 911. And Juliana, not thinking and just going with the direction of Christine instead of following through with her plan, she like calls 911, and then Brendan tells her to like hang up because at that point they hadn't murdered Christine yet. They hadn't stabbed her yet. And they also needed to stage the crime scene.
We saw the body-worn camera and the photos from the scene. Blankets piled near the bodies. Brendan Banfield kneeling on this blue towel. The towel that has very little staining, completely inconsistent with having been used to stop the flow of blood coming from Christine's neck.
Yep.
We heard that the carpet was soaked through to the subfloor. We saw Brendan Banfield's handcuffs that he didn't use. Magazines full of bullets he didn't shoot, collected from him after the murders. And finally, the blood evidence. You heard from Lieutenant Giacchio and former Deputy Chief Bruce that it was Iris Dallygraff's report that finally pushed this case over the edge and brought the charges against Mr. Banfield months before Juliana decided to flip. That's how strong this evidence is. That's how reliable this evidence is.
She talked about how there was like droplets, I think, on it was like droplets on Joe's clothes. So it looked like the way the blood was splattered was like someone dropped it on him or something. But the most important one were the ones on Joe's hands, unfortunately. On Joe's hands, like his hands were kind of like this, right? Like as if someone like positioned his hands like that. But there were parts where there was like these like harsh lines of demarcations on his hands where it looked like there was like blood that was flowing, but then it stopped flowing because there was an object or maybe something else that was like blocking in the way. But when they discovered Joe Ryan's body and his fingers, there was nothing blocking. And there should have been nothing to create those like harsh demarcation lines. So I think that was like one of the major things they also focused on.
Ms. Dallygraff walked us through so many inconsistencies in this scene.
Like it looked like he was being positioned that way and moved around,
Proving that it had been manipulated. And you heard absolutely nothing from the defense about this evidence. Mr. Banfield gave you zero explanation for any.
That's true. That's true. What's the attorney's name again? Mr. Colley? I forgot his name. The defense attorney. He focused a lot on the body cam footages, on law enforcement, how there was a disagreement within the homicide unit. And then they did go over the digital evidence stuff, but like, oh my God, like all the other stuff, like I was like, I know you were cross-examining, but still, I don't know. I thought they would hire their own expert and then like deal with more. Like they did have like a blood expert who did testify about that. And she said she just disagreed. And she thought the state's blood expert was overgeneralizing. Was being way too specific with some of the blood splatter stuff when in her opinion, she would have overgeneralized some of them, something like that. But yeah, there was just a lot that I was expecting the defense to go over, but kind of just like raised over. I don't know. That was my opinion.
Of this evidence about this, proving that it had been manipulated. And you heard absolutely nothing from the defense about this evidence. Mr. Banfield gave you zero explanation for any of this evidence. Slide 15.
I mean, there were some cross-examinations with the blood stuff.
They have provided no explanation for Christine's blood smeared on the right hand of Joe Ryan, leaving voids between the fingers.
Oh, hold on. Did I miss that? Christine's blood smeared? Let's see.
Provided no explanation for Christine's blood smeared on the right hand of Joe Ryan, leaving voids between the fingers.
Oh, Juliana said that apparently Brendan was scooping blood. He was like trying to scoop blood, as much as he could, and tried to like stage the blood around to make it seem like there was an interaction with blood between Christine and Joe.
They have no explanation for the blood smeared across the top of the right onto the left, leaving that void on Joe Ryan's hand where they had been overlapping. For that matter, you have no explanation from defense for how his hands came to be in that position, neatly folded on his chest, covering the bullet wound.
Yeah, his hand was like kind of like this, like positioned like this.
You have no explanation from defense for how his hands came to be in that position, neatly folded on his chest, covering the bullet wound that penetrated his spine, immobilizing him. How could that have happened if you are to believe Mr. Banfield?
I'm a little
There's
confused about
been
that one.
no explanation for the bloody hand-like smears on Joseph Ryan's jeans containing Christine Banfield's DNA. There's been no explanation from defense for how his jeans ended up bunched under his rear. Next slide. There's been nothing to tell us why a mixture of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield's blood, a mixture, could possibly have been on the inside of his waistband at the buttonhole, on the button, and on the zipper. Nothing from the defense to explain how Joe Ryan could possibly have manipulated his pants after being shot in the head, given that no other bleeding wounds were present. If his blood is on those pants, on that button, on that zipper, he was bleeding when they were touched. How could he, Joseph Ryan, have been the one to touch his button, his zipper, the waistband of his pants, to pull them down in that fashion?
Oh, interesting. Because if he did pull down his pants, it would have been before he was shot at. Now, it would make sense why Christine's blood would be found on the inner waistband and on the button because, you know, Brendan said that Christine could have been stabbed before he got there. But Joe wouldn't have been bloodied until after being shot. Okay. It's like he got shot and then for some reason he was like messing with his waistband. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Why would he do that, right? Okay. Interesting. I was a little curious where she was going because I was a little confused about that. I did hear testimony about the waistband and the button, but that's when it started getting a little bit like, oh, okay, like this is like really dense for me.
How could Joseph Ryan, have been the one to touch his button, his zipper, the waistband of his pants, to pull them down in that fashion?
Go back and listen to that testimony.
Brendan told you he never touched Joseph Ryan.
Yeah.
And yet we have distinctive finger-shaped parallel lines on Joseph Ryan's arm and small circular stains consistent with blood having been dropped from above while Joseph Ryan lay on his back.
Yeah, the droplets on his clothes.
Next. And then there's the blood on Joe's hip. Blood that traveled onto his body and then ran down to the floor with the assistance of gravity while he lay prone. It couldn't have come from his chest. That wound barely bled. He was laying down when blood was shed. Makes it pretty impossible that he stabbed Christine Banfield. Next. On the other hand, Brendan Banfield has cast off on his jeans. He has blood all over his hands. The blood stains on the backpack don't line up with the position of its contents. The blood on Joe's face is not consistent with his final position. And I'm back to Joe's hands.
Yep.
This scene was manipulated. On Joe's hands.
So I can go back a little bit.
On the other hand, Brendan Banfield has cast off on his jeans. He has blood all over his hands. The blood stains on the backpack don't line up with the position of its contents. The blood on Joe's face is not consistent with his final position. And I'm back to Joe's hands. This scene was manipulated. And it wasn't by Joe, it wasn't by Christine, and according to him, Juliana didn't do it.
Should have blamed Juliana. Oh, you should have blamed her for everything. Hello, how are you doing today? Hi, Siobhan. How's it going? Hi, CMB. Good morning. Good morning. When I first, he was like, when I heard that he was a federal agent and then he like announced himself as like police officer, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. He's like, oh, he worked for the IRS. But like, I wonder what type of work they did for the IRS because like, I guess they did some undercover stuff and they did have a gun and did have a badge. So I was like, oh, because I was thinking like when I first heard IRS, I was like, oh, maybe it's like some like boring desk work shit, just does a lot of paperwork stuff. But like, it seems like they were like on the field, like doing some stuff. Like, I don't know, kind of interesting.
You have zero explanation from the defense as to how all of this blood evidence can be as it is. The Commonwealth gave you an explanation. Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalis colluded to kill Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. That makes sense. They created accounts, they chatted up potential victims, they got Joe Ryan into the house, and then they shot him. Brendan stabbed Christine, let her bleed out on the floor, and then dripped, smeared, and wiped her blood on Joseph Ryan's body to make it look like he had attacked Christine.
Wild. I wonder if Christine was aware of when that was happening. Like, why is he taking my blood and dripping it on this guy's?
Then they called the police. Brendan let Juliana take the fall, and it took a little bit of doing, but here we are, and it's his turn to be held accountable. All of this evidence can leave you with no doubt that Brendan Banfield killed Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. That is the first element of the aggravated homicide statute. The hard work is done. Element 2, that the killing was willful, done with a bad purpose, intentional, and deliberate. There can be no question in your minds as to the intentionality of this act, the deliberateness of this act.
Premeditation.
You must also find that it was premeditated, that at some point before the killing, he decided to kill Christine and Joe. I believe that we've presented you with that evidence as well. For one of the offenses, you find that he killed 2 people within 3 years. As we've identified, same day, definitely within 3 years. For the other offense, you
Is it possible that Joe could have been cut from the knife and manipulated his clothes, or was that never brought up? They did bring up something that he had on his hand. I think it was through the defense's questioning, where they thought that there was something called like a self-injury. You know, sometimes when you're like, well, I guess you don't know because we never stabbed people before. I mean, hopefully not. But apparently sometimes if a stabbing happens, you could self-injure yourself. So they did say that he did have something like on his hand. And the defense was trying to say that maybe he was a stabber because he had these like self-injuries. Maybe that could have been the cut. That, I don't know if it was like a cut or not, though. I couldn't really tell from the picture. But they just kept calling it a self-injury. So it's possible that in defense, in their closing arguments, they could have been like, yeah, you know, they had something, Joe had something weird in his hand. It looked like it was a self-injury. Could have been possible that that's how the blood got on his jeans and all the other stuff. Maybe. We'll see what the defense is in closing arguments. I don't really have high expectations from the defense. He seems like a sweet guy. He seems like a really nice, he's polite guy. But oh my God, does he not have his shit together? Like, I don't know. Watching him and the lack of organization, I'm just like really confused. He was a prosecutor at some point too. Way back, but I don't know. He's got a very lax approach to things. She has a very lax approach to things too, in my opinion, but like there are ways of like lax is like so opposite of each other. She's like lax, but like also very intense. The other dude is like lax and like chill and disorganized.
You find that it was 2 people killed during the same transaction or occurrence. They were both killed in the room. As
Speed up a
part
little
of
bit.
the same plot, by the same person, same transaction or occurrence. The second offense is for the use of a firearm in the commission of the murders. We know from our experts that Joe Ryan died of his multiple gunshot wounds, one of which came from Brendan. If you have any question about whether or not Brendan can be held responsible when Juliana also shot Joseph Ryan, you'll have instruction O, that is concert of action. So I'm going to read to you what it says. If there is concert of action with the resulting crime, one of its incidental probable consequences, then whether such crime was originally contemplated or not, all who participate in any way in bringing it about are equally answerable and bound by the acts of every other person connected with the consummation of such resulting crime. Virginia makes it easy. Translate. If you think that Juliana Perez Magalis and Brendan Banfield were working together to kill Christine and Joseph Ryan, then Brendan can be responsible for Joseph Ryan's death, regardless of which bullet did the most damage. It's not a test of either or. They were working together. That makes him equally responsible.
Yeah, because I was actually wondering about that. Apparently, Brendan shot Joe first. It wasn't a killing shot. when they were setting up the crime scene, Joe at some point, I don't know if this is true or not, but Joe at some point was writhing and was about to get up. That's what Juliana says. And she was the one who put in the final bullet that that killed him. But based on Virginia law, even though Brendan didn't have the killing shot, he's still culpable for it. So it's still equally as if him and Juliana both shot and killed Joe Ryan, even though it wasn't the killing shot. Don't you hate it when you cut your hands and immediately have to scratch your balls? That would explain it. Stop. Oh,
The last
no.
charge is the endangerment to Valerie. So while in his custody, that the defendant willfully or negligently caused or permitted the life of such child to be endangered. He made it out to be Juliana's idea, but he brought Valerie into that home. He left her in the basement, knowing that Joe Ryan was upstairs. He left her in the basement while he shot and killed Joe Ryan. He left her in the basement while he stabbed his wife. He could have locked the door. He could have done this on a day she wasn't home. He could have made arrangements for someone.
Yeah, like what? My goodness. What if his kid came upstairs and saw the whole thing? Crazy.
Else to have her overnight, but that didn't work with his plan. So he's guilty of this offense as well.
I didn't know about the child
I
endangerment one.
appreciate again all of the attention that you've given. I appreciate again all of the hard work you're about to face. Please be thoughtful in your deliberations, but at the end of the day, I don't think that there can be any reasonable doubt that Mr. Banfield has committed each and every one of the offenses that we have put before you today. Thank you.
All right, straight to the point.
I'm sorry, closing arguments?
Sharon, may I bring a bottle of water up in front of the...
You can. I
Thank
just
you.
need to get the,
I need some more water too, Mr. Carroll. All right, guys, thoughts? State's closing arguments? I mean, it's so easy to follow her story in this convoluted scheme. She's loud, she's forceful, she knows when to pause, she knows when to slow down, and she knows when to be oomph about certain things. Yeah, straight to the point. I guess, like, I wonder what the jury instructions look like. Like, does it look confusing or does it look not confusing? Because now, after with the whole Karen Reed thing, I'm like, man, jury instructions is really important for you to really go over. Sometimes you got to have the presentation up and you got to show them how to check things, right? But I don't know, maybe in Virginia, maybe the jury instructions are not as complicated, possibly. But it seems like it was very straight to the point. And hopefully she, I think she probably had the jury's attention the entire time. All right, Mr. Carroll. All right, Mr. Carroll, you got this. I'm going to speed you up though, Mr. Carroll, because I think you sound better, a little bit sped up for me. Oh, actually, let me change. Remove defense closing argument. All right. Defense closing argument. Let's see what he says about the blood splatter stuff. Replace pinned messages. Okay. All right, guys, don't forget, vote for the poll. Whose story do you believe more? Brendan, the defendant who testified yesterday and the day before that, or Juliana, the au pair who testified on day one? I'm hungry. All right, this is Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll used to be a prosecutor.
Gentlemen, can you hear me? That's
You speak
been a
up.
bit of a problem, but I have it right on me at this point. I join in the Commonwealth's thanks for your attention, for the time that you've put into this. I intend to present to you with highlights of many of the things that we went through, but I can assure you I'm not going to be going through the evidence that's already been moved in. And it took a long time, and you were very patient, and everyone was very patient.
You were very patient with me, and I thank you for your patience. I'm so sorry for wasting your time and fucking up with the foundation stuff. We forgive you. Ish.
Is that better?
He seems like a nice guy. Just disorganized.
Can everyone hear that? Okay. I'll try to speak a little louder.
Do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I join in thanking you for your time, for your attention. You could see over the nearly 3 weeks that everybody was attentive, and that's something that is something that's crucial to this process, and so I thank you. When my children were younger, I used to walk out of the house and tell them, I'm going to defend the Constitution. They didn't have any idea what that was, and oftentimes that became, okay, whatever, Dad. I was a prosecutor then. I was a prosecutor in Fairfax County. And what that meant to me was you presented a case, no matter who it was, you presented a case where you looked at all possibilities and you looked at all evidence to determine and to make sure that you were pursuing someone that the evidence would support. In this case, this was quite unusual. When we first met for the initial opening, I talked to you about some things that I thought you should look into. I thought that you should have an ear towards what is it that they're going to present as evidence. And even I was surprised that the evidence that ultimately was presented by the Commonwealth was actually from my case. The only people that were called to testify from the Commonwealth's case in chief were for body cam video, police officers, a couple of those, and Detective Terry Leach. And he was the one who identified all of the scene photos. He identified many of the pieces of evidence that were brought in. And he was able to talk a little bit about things such as the blood stains on the gun, the blood stains next to the bed. And what he told you, ladies and gentlemen, and this was the extent of, I think, their testimony in their case, was that there are numerous things within this scene that we can see in pictures, but they were never tested. There are numerous things that became the centerpiece of the fantastic story that the Commonwealth tells, yet they were never tested. For example, if I were to have the opportunity to cross-examine, say, the chief detective of this case, I might ask, why wasn't there fingerprints done, or even DNA, of this gun safe that we hear about? We hear Juliana goes into the back bathroom and talks about getting a gun.
Okay.
It changes a little bit over time, but if someone had said they went to the gun safe, because we're talking about guns, we're talking about shooting, why wouldn't there be some sort of evidence to either corroborate or preclude that possibility?
But I thought by the time they got Juliana's story to corroborate that, a year and a half had already passed by, right? The gun safe, it doesn't matter. Am I missing something? I mean, he's probably saying that, like, oh, they should have done it beforehand when they first responded to the scene. But I don't think they knew about, actually, did they know about yeah, I know, they did know about the second gun, right? Yeah, because Brendan had one, and then they probably would have saw in the forensics, the ballistic stuff, that there's two guns in the scene. I don't know, actually. But I'm just saying that by the time Juliana came out with her story, a year and a half had already passed by, and both her and Brendan were living in the house for like 8 months during the honeymoon stage after two people were murdered in that bedroom, and they both slept in there and acted like nothing happened. But too much time would have already passed by.
I asked Detective Leach, he says, well, it's really up to the forensic examiners. They make the decision. In looking at the scene, you'll notice in the body cam video that you're going to be reviewing, there's a point when first responders come in and you see Brendan kneeling down next to his wife, rendering aid. He just shot Joe Ryan. He testified yesterday, he puts the gun down to his right, which is where his holster is. And he also indicates to you in his testimony yesterday that he moves the knife away from Joe Ryan.
Why is he reminding the jury of the body cam footage when Brendan is kneeling next to his wife, not using the towels, not using the blankets to stop the bleeding in the wife's neck? Well, I mean, okay, I guess you could just pretend like that didn't happen, but like that's like a little reminder right there.
The staining on the bed where my client put the gun for the first responders, because whenever there's any sort of a shooting, you have to make sure that you are nowhere near the gun in the event that you're perceived as someone who's hostile.
Yeah.
He puts it to the corner of the bed, and the questions that remain were, did anybody ever test the blood on that gun? And you hear from Detective Leach, you can't do that. It was already test fired, and that would be potential for contaminating. Now, we didn't test the stains down on the floor where the gun was lying in before it went up on the bed. And we didn't test the gun, which appeared to be something that a serologist could just take a swab of. Yet there's some significance placed on the fact that there was a blood stain where the gun was when it had been sitting in a puddle. And so that actually was tested. In terms of the blood stain pattern analysis, which appears to be the Commonwealth's main focus of the case now, there are questions about many of the things that Ms. Sands says were never tested. And so the conclusions that are being reached in terms of Brendan Banfield did this, he did this, he did this, based upon whatever blood analysis, is oftentimes not considering the fact that it was never tested. We don't even know whose blood it was. Those kind of things are important. And so let's go back to defending the Constitution. When you are charged with presenting a case, and I chuckle a little bit when Ms. Sands says, we haven't proved anything, we haven't shown any evidence. All we've done is show evidence. All we've done is try to get the truth out there. My client doesn't have to testify, yet he gets up there and he tells a story. He's a philanderer. We can conclude that. It's horrible. It's a horrible situation to be in. He had affairs. He accepted that. He told you, ladies and gentlemen, exactly what was going on and exactly how it went. On cross-examination, he admitted to communications that were provided, which were letters between he and Giuliano when she was in jail. This is about the truth. In the beginning, you heard our duty is about fairness, our duty is about being just, all those sorts of things. Yet you don't put on any of your detectives. She's referring to the expert that they have that I called. I called 3 times, and you saw his demeanor. He was very uncomfortable. Why would he be uncomfortable? Why would he have been uncomfortable talking about his work? And we dug for it, and he ultimately said, the executive summary and the data remain the same.
New poll, guys. What are your thoughts on the state's closing argument?
The only thing that changed is Juliana Perez Magale's statement. Excuse me one second.
Huh? And they got the blood splatter results.
So there, number one, that's the first time that anyone in this case, which was when I called him, conclusively said the entire catfishing theory changed upon her plea deal. So let's talk a little bit about confirmation bias. Or I think we referred to it when we were talking in closing, or when I was talking in closing, about a rush to judgment. You've heard from detectives from Fairfax County. Detective Smith came up and she told you the catfish theory started within weeks of the event. She says, that's not how we do it. We look to the evidence and we follow the evidence. Seems like a pretty reasonable way to go. And that was something that I asked of pretty much everyone that was in some sort of investigatory capacity. That is the way cases go, is the evidence leads you where you're going to go. But lo and behold, what we find out is that that theory is being peddled by the 2 people in command staff, actually the 3 people in command staff that you also heard from. You heard from from Mr. Bruch, formerly Deputy Chief Bruch, that when Brendan Miller presented his findings, well, first of all, he said, I didn't agree with his report. And I said, well, what, if any, analysis of the raw data did you do in order to make that statement, I don't agree with this report? He said, well, it wasn't that. I don't know about the data, though he said he was a computer forensic PhD. He didn't take the time to do that. So I said, okay, well, did you ever have Detective Miller come in and walk you through it? Like, show your work? Well, we talked about it quite often, but did you, in fact, have him go through everything that he did to arrive at his work? No, we didn't do that. He speaks to Lieutenant...
Detective Miller is the one that they like force transfer him out, right? Because apparently he was not following... Was he the one that said that for sure Christine was the one that had possession of the devices that was on FetLife? And then everyone else was like, that's not what it shows here.
Giaccio at the time, who appears to have a direct line to him, obviating anybody else within the command staff. And what you'll see, and you'll see it in the evidence, there are emails where soon after Juliana Perez Magalhaes changes her story, there are emails to Sergeant Ames. And you remember Sergeant Ames, he came to the stand based upon my subpoena and my calling him. And Sergeant Ames was not comfortable. And you can see any of these police witnesses are just not comfortable coming to the stand on my subpoenas and answering my questions. But he did answer them. And what you saw were emails. Those emails were essentially, they were just kind of forwarding it up the chain so that his supervisors knew. And he was very candid about it. I was new. I wasn't sure how to deal with a situation like this. I'd never dealt with a situation like this. But what the situation was Detective Miller's executive summary being sent up the chain to Sergeant Ames, who was in a different division than Lieutenant Giaccio, saying there's different ways, there's 3 different emails that you'll see. Brendan Miller has got to look over this, and he's got to go line by line and explain how he got it wrong, things such as that. The final one is to Sergeant Ames. I can tell you that every single conclusion in his report was wrong. He's going to have to do something in order to, and it's kind of, essentially, he's going to have to change this report because it needs to conform with the proffer of Juliana Perez Magalhaes.
The way that he is wording that sounds really bad, but when you get more information and you start getting full context of what happened, then yeah, things change. Knowledge is incomplete and provisional. It's not always going to stay the same. The more information you get, the more it's like, okay, now we have a more like full picture of like what went down. But his wording of it, it's like very crafty. He's like, oh, they're changing their executive summary to fit Juliana's story. It's like Juliana is giving a story that fits the evidence, and it seems like her story tracks with what they have. So yeah, now that we realize that it wasn't Christine who was using the devices, that it was Brendan and Juliana who would be yoinking it underneath, underneath Christine's house while she was at home, and she was like tired, or maybe she was like taking showers, maybe she was in the bathroom. Now it adds to the complete picture.
So that's twice now. 2 different people that I called to the stand that essentially confirms that everything changes when she comes in and testifies.
Oh, he's still
Let's get back
going,
to
actually.
confirmation bias, rush to judgment. When you have people of in a supervisory nature, you have a command staff chain of command, and the highest people are pushing you on your work product.
Confirmation bias, rush to judgment. But Brendan wasn't arrested until 8 months, 1 year. I think Brendan wasn't arrested until almost 2 years, maybe a year and 8 months after Christine was murdered.
That's why you look like the people that are up here testifying, because they're sitting on the fence. They're sitting on a razor, and neither side is good for them. But they came before us and they testified, as to the truth. Detective Miller spoke the truth, and you can see it. Detective Miller, his work was concurred by Mr. Litsky, who you heard for quite often during this period of time.
Was it confirmed, though? Because Litsky, their expert, said that he was unable to say who actually had the devices. He just said that Christine's device didn't have, like, what's it called? Like loss of control or something like that. As in, like, he couldn't say definitively who was using the devices. He just said that, like, oh, well, whoever was using the laptop did this. Whoever was using the cell phone did this. And then when they were going through the different devices, it seemed like on one device, was it on the cell phone maybe, or the laptop? I forgot which device was which, but like one device was looking at like Lululemon or like Frozen, or like the kid who had their leg amputated. And then the other device was like on FetLife, on like Telegram or something. Like he was unable to say like who was using what device.
And it was peer reviewed and it was concurred by someone, a third party. You heard Detective Miller say, that's never been done in Fairfax County. You heard him say, I didn't ask for that peer review. He didn't know who asked for that peer review. Why would you want a peer review of something if it wasn't for it to change? So once again, not happy with that, not happy with the work product. There's nothing to indicate in Detective Miller's background anything but stellar expertise. But he wasn't introduced as an expert for the Commonwealth. Now, this is where this whole theory went wrong. They discredited him, they disregarded him, and they didn't listen to him. And that's a problem. That's a problem for their case. Because there are things in digital forensics that had he been involved with the group that was talking to Juliana Perez Magalhaes, he would have been able to guide them in terms of this is where the digital forensics is in conflict with you. And you heard me testify, or I'm sorry, you heard me ask questions of many of these detectives who might have been involved. Did anybody ever challenge her? Were you present when she recanted for the first time? Well, we couldn't ask that of anyone because the detectives that were in the room have not been called. The detectives that were in the room, I didn't call. And so we don't know anything, but we heard Detective Miller, and he had viewed it, and he said, when I asked him, were there challenges to what was said? He said, no, it was pretty free-flowing. To me,
And then they would take her story and they would try to corroborate it with what they had in evidence. Are we missing that part?
that tells you whatever the story you're telling us is great, because we're getting bread in Banfield based upon that. Once again, confirmation bias. The first few weeks after the death of Christine Banfield becomes this theory of catfishing, which is what Juliana Perez Magalhaes provides to this. Now let's talk a little bit about digital forensics. And I'm not going to try to use the computer to show these to you because that was excruciating at times. But I think we've gone through it with significant enough detail that when you go back to look at the exhibits, and I'll tell you which exhibits if you wish to write them down, you're going to be able to see exactly what Mr. Litsky was saying. It's complicated. It's been complicated for me since the beginning, but it's not necessarily an easy grasp. But I would ask that you take the opportunity. You're going to have all this evidence to review this particular area. So some of you may have been asking about January, or may wonder about January 9th. That's a significant date in this investigation, because that's the day when the Gmail account, called the suspect Gmail account, was started.
Oh, it was like they believed that whoever was operating the device didn't show loss of dominion and control or something like that. Yeah, it was like a weird way of wording it. But then later on, his own witness that he called on the stand, I think also works for Fairfax PD, said that Christine did not use a device that was engaging in FetLife. I was like, oh man, I'm pretty sure that his defense attorney didn't want him to say that.
Let's just look at how Juliana Perez Magalhaes managed this. Regarding the Gmail setup on January 9, 2023, Juliana told the Commonwealth that she was at the house with Brendan when she witnessed him create the Gmail account that was used to kick off the entire catfishing scheme.
Oh, okay.
The Commonwealth took her at her word. The police didn't make any effort to corroborate her story. The one detective who stood up and said the evidence contradicted her story was transferred off the case. I think the words were from then Deputy Chief Bruce, "That guy will never work on another digital forensics case in major crimes as long as I'm here."
I heard
He
that.
admitted it.
Yep,
There
he
was
did.
no dancing around.
No, he was straight up
admitted it.
about it.
So you have something that's in opposition to whatever the theory is that you're trying to peddle, and you're in the command staff, you're high up in the police department, you can just transfer them. And so it was from that point on, Detective Miller was of no benefit to the police because no one would utilize him once the stamp of disapproval had hit him. He was moved over to child sex. Juliana told the same story to you here in court, and it's a lie. The account wasn't created with Christine's phone. I'm sorry, the account was created with Christine's phone, not her laptop, which was the story that Juliana had told. Juliana wasn't even home. She hadn't witnessed anything. And you saw the presentation, and that would be, the evidence would be Exhibit 297, Exhibit 294, and Exhibit 295. They're all in relation. You'd be looking at the Google records, the T-Mobile records, and the subsequent map of where the location was.
Where was she?
You heard from Mr. Litsky that the Gmail account is crucial. They all interact. The Gmail account is necessary to get the messages relating to the FetLife. And then the Telegram was created as part of this, whatever we want to call it at this point. Juliana made it up. She told the Commonwealth what they wanted to hear, and without question, they just took it as their story. She told this lie to secure herself a deal that benefited her. This one event relating to digital forensics is reasonable doubt, because every other event going forward requires Brendan, based upon her statement that she didn't have anything to do it, she didn't know how to do the Gmail account, she didn't know anything about the setup, requires Brendan to be involved, or Christine. So let's look at this. There was a period of time, and you heard evidence of it, Brendan wasn't at home. January 23rd, there was a Gmail login at 11:22. That's Defense Exhibit 245. FetLife was accessed. In the communications, you heard Mr. Litsky opine as an expert that catfishing is not a scheme where one talks about their husband or talks about how's your experience on this site. Catfishing in the truest form of the government's theory is we just want to get someone on the hook, and then person's gonna come, and then we're gonna do what we did in there in the house. It's not consistent with catfishing. And you'll see, based upon the records relating to January 23rd, there was only one adult in the home at that time. And that adult was Christine Banfield. January 30th, there are two Gmail logins, 10:36 and 11:03. Exhibits Brendan Banfield 251 and Brendan Banfield 252. Brendan wasn't home. That can be shown. So there are two adults in the house, Christine Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhaes. Juliana testified to all of you. She doesn't know anything about the Gmail. She doesn't know how to activate it. Well, somebody activated it that day. Somebody logged in twice. And there are two adults in the house. Either Juliana's lying again, and she did figure out how to do Gmail, or this was Christine Banfield. Digital forensics, oftentimes, for people who don't understand it, will say things like, well, isn't it possible this? Well, you see what happens when an investigator is looking into, trying to get attribution. They're looking at all sorts of different data facts in order to make a determination, make an opinion. It's not as easy as saying, well, isn't it possible this? There's more to it. And once again, digital forensics is not being given the strength that it is due. February 7th, 2023, Gmail login at 10:02 p.m. There's only two adults in the house. Brendan Banfield can be identified as being out of the house, and one of whom says she never did anything with Gmail. That's BB 257. It's been presented to you. You can recollect what it was that was said, but what we know is that Brendan was out of the house. What we know is that Juliana was there, and we know that Christine was there. February 13th, 2023. There are logins in the morning in the 7 a.m. hour. Well, what we know from digital forensics is that Brendan left at 6:05. And at 6:12, he was at Tyson's Corner, based upon his E-ZPass records. At 6:17, he was already to Alexandria. And soon thereafter, he was in Cheltenham, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. They call it FLETC. Well, while he's on the road, actually, while he's at the FLETC Training Center doing his training, there are 2 logins. And there are 2 possible adults there. Juliana Perez Magalhaes, who has said she doesn't know how to do that,
I'm going to speed him up just a bit.
and Christine Banfield. 2:17, you'll see Gmail logins at 11:19, 11:23, Exhibit 262, 263, same thing. 2 possible adults. Brendan Banfield was out of the house. One said she never did anything with Gmail.
Something tells me that Brendan just got Juliana to do a lot of the dirty work. You know, I don't know. I wonder if Brendan said it so, like, in case they were to get caught, all the digital forensic would show that it could have been possibly been Juliana, maybe? No, but then, like, when he would testify in the stand, he would just throw her under the bus, right? I don't know.
A fact that I think is very important in the discovery that was provided, both to Juliana Perez Magalhaes as well as my client in preparation for her trial, FetLife was in the discovery, but Gmail was never in focus. Never in focus. So her testimony, there's a comfort level with FetLife because she saw it in discovery. She didn't see the Gmail. And isn't that a coincidence that when asked any details, she says, I don't know. When she says, I don't know, for 5 or 6 questions, I hope you recall it, I recall it vividly, she said, if you keep asking these questions, I'm just going to say, I don't know. And she continued to do that.
Yeah, because she said she didn't know. She said, I can't answer if I don't know. And there was something else that was like, I am unable to answer if I have to make a guess.
Were my questions challenging, like the kind of questions that a detective might do? No, we were just looking for details. We were looking for details because we wanted to try to iron out what are these situations here. She was unwilling. She didn't know, but she knew I was digging for something. But if you look at the way she testified to all of you in direct, she was led to a certain statement or a certain fact, and she stated it. In cross-examination, I asked anything about that. Do you know who was in the house? Do you know where you were? Were you on the phone on WhatsApp with Christine prior to that? Where were you located at the time that this call took place? I don't know. I don't know. If that's what it says, I don't know. You know, there were a series of similar answers. Once again, her role has grown in importance for this case. It's, along with Deputy Chief Bruce and Lieutenant Giacchio, she's pushing it on through her deal. Now, one of the things that I talked to you all about, and one of the lengthy cross-examinations, was relating to a group of exhibits which were number 1 through number 69. And you'll see it. It was highlighted. I think you've seen it for a brief period of time, but we were moving along. Look at that.
Also, Juliana had her email was a Gmail, so I'm sure she knew how to work a Gmail.
You'll see, these are the personal letters that she would write to my client. And those personal letters, I believe, is the closest to the truth that you will have heard from Juliana Perez Magalhaes. She was in a situation which really was affecting her. And it would affect anyone. And she was telling you how she was feeling. She was telling you what she thought. There were things that were relevant to this case. They're trying to make me turn on you. I'm not going to do it. I don't have anything to say. There's nothing that I can do to help them with. And then you'd see letters as the time went on. I don't know if I can live like this anymore. I think it's better for me to end. And then as she gets closer to a preliminary hearing in April of 2024, you start to see real angst and real worry. And they're coming to her and asking her if she'll testify against my client, because that's what they wanted from the beginning. She was a pawn in trying to get to my client. You'll see this timeline in these letters. It goes toward July. July was the date of her first trial. And you'll see, and I'm not suggesting what she's saying about her lawyer is correct, but it was obviously something that was on her mind, and she didn't feel like she had the support. At that point, if you think about it, the only support that she was having was from Brendan. Brendan was not arrested. Brendan was there communicating with her. Brendan's mom was actually supporting her lifestyle in the jail in terms of commissary, things like that, and also supporting her by having paid for a lawyer. Around August, you'll see in these letters, it gets to be real despair. And then you can almost see hope just drop right away from her when she hears that Brendan's arrested. And then she testified. She went into the hospital from October 13th to October 23rd. And as soon as she's released and back to the jail, the deal is done. She's told, if you testify against him, we'll recommend time served disposition. She can go back to Brazil, be with her mom, create her new life. And we know a little bit about the new life that she's planning on creating. And you have it in the documents that are before you. She's been negotiating with people who are connected to Netflix. She's been negotiating with people who are connected to Hulu. She's been talking to every other news media, at first, to try to see if they just put $50 into her commissary. But then she realized, hey, there may be something here. She's admitted she's going to try to write letters. She's going to try to write a book. She wants to have a documentary. She wants to have a series. And she's about to sign or about to agree when her lawyer steps in and says, don't sign that. And so around March of 2025, you see negotiations essentially end. The number was in the area of $25,000, and it was going to be sent to her mother in Brazil. It's a lot of money in Brazil. And so where's the downside for her? Where's the downside for her? There are plenty of people who would make that decision, given the circumstances, given you're 2 weeks from the trial, when your attorney asks for a continuance. And oddly enough,
if Brendan's story is correct and she didn't do any of this, the downside is that she admits to the murder of 2 people. You know?
he was asking to find a digital forensic examiner. If they'd done that, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Maybe they would have realized how strong the digital forensics examinations are. Her entire story has been bought and paid for. First, with her freedom, and then now a little bit on the back end. There's a
Back
jury
end,
instruction in here
eh?
that says something about corroborated, uncorroborated testimony, and you should be careful of it. Now, how did they try to corroborate her? So isn't this funny? They're trying to bolster the witness who's the centerpiece of their entire case. Well, they found something when my client was arrested on his laptop that said they'd just gotten vinyl light windows in December. So sitting in the meeting with whomever, they say,
The windows in December? I thought the window was before the affair.
can you tell us anything about these vinyl light windows? They're triple paned, probably really good. I wasn't there, I don't know. But the story she gave was that, fantastic. We got the triple pane windows because Brendan wanted to make sure you couldn't hear a gunshot in the bedroom. And and she says, he asked me to go outside and scream to see if the windows, and she says, I'm not going to do that. So she ended up staying inside and saying Brendan went out and screamed. Well, you heard the test. This gentleman from Vinyl Light
No, she went out and then Brendan stayed inside and screamed, right?
windows came in. They trotted him up there. And he said, yeah, we met in January. That was when we first talked about this. And it wasn't just the windows for the bedroom, which is what Juliana said. It was the full windows. And then you saw an artifact on Facebook that is Christine Banfield actually talking to her neighbors about the numerous vendors that they had been working with to try to get a quote from December 2021. So this is well before.
Oh, that's what he meant by December. Okay, yeah. I believe that Christina was part of the window thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when Juliana tells a story about the screaming thing with the triple pane windows, yeesh.
Juliana came on the scene, but it's an opportunity to try to make her appear in the know, to corroborate her. Well, that was a disaster, and that didn't work.
Do they have I think they probably have this recorded, right? Well, I'd love to see the recording of the police interviews.
You heard the gentleman, what the life cycle of order to quotes to all those things. They were all done well before any sort of relationship started with Brendan. confirmation bias. Rush to judgment. It continues on. Detective Leah Smith tells us the catfish theory was told to them within 2 weeks. She goes on to talk about the theory and investigation and the direction it was going in. During a period of time soon thereafter, Detective Miller tells of his transfer against his will because he was advised he'd never work on major crimes cases again. Sergeant Ames, after receiving communications from...
I have no idea, Alice. I have no idea. I don't know how they do the top 3 thing. YouTube rolls out these, like, in my opinion, stupid features. I feel like no one really cares about, but maybe it's like whoever's chatting the most at that moment, I guess. I don't know what the time frame is, though.
Lieutenant Giacchio immediately sends it up the chain. Could be just the way he does things, or it could be, read those emails. Hey, I'm being asked to do this. I need some support here. When you have a theory that gets pushed from non-investigative command staff, and you have a theory that the investigators look at, then you create something called tunnel vision. And that tunnel vision, if you're following what essentially are orders, is to the exclusion of any other evidence, any other theory, such as maybe this is a rekindling of previous fantasies, and the guy who brought the knife to the house is the stabber. You can see how that theory is going to be pushed aside.
You would think that maybe there'll be more photos of Christine with, like, bruises, maybe, you know? If she was really into this kink and she was really having affairs.
And you can see how that's not very noteworthy for purposes of media or other attention. Once again, rush to judgment.
You're still I think he's dragging it out a little too much. Dude, he's still going. We're like about 8 minutes behind. He's still going. I'm trying to speed through this. He's essentially saying that Juliana's story is bought. She had nothing to lose from his perspective, and that she was going to get this plea deal that was amazing. She would be looking at 10 years max with time served. She had this like deal with Netflix, Hulu. You know, people were hitting her up, trying to get her side of the story, and she had nothing to lose but to gain for all of this. But like I mentioned, I mean, you're essentially, if you're innocent, right? If she's innocent and the story went exactly how Brendan said it did, that they weren't the ones that set up the wife, they didn't have any involvement, and it went down exactly how Brendan said, then why would Juliana confess to all these things? Why would she say that she was the one who helped create the account, and she was like, you know, her and Brendan were switching behind the scenes to like switch to like take turns using the Christine's devices to use FetLife to the Signal? Why would she admit to communicating with Joe Ryan? Why would she admit to just a lot of these things, right? If she was innocent. I mean, not that I'm saying it doesn't happen. Sometimes it does happen. Sometimes innocent people do admit to crimes that they didn't commit, right? But in Juliana's case, it's like, man, she came up with like this story that just fit perfectly with the evidence. Crazy.
Catfishing.
Brendan looked like a thumb, man. Juliana looked like a thumb to me, okay? She looked like a fucking thumb.
If you're
Brendan too, I guess.
catfishing, meaning you were trying to get the one guy, Joe Ryan, to come to the house so that you can do this gruesome act, why are you saying anything about, I can't have marks on my face or my body? If you're catfishing, why would that matter? It doesn't make sense. It's inconsistent. However, if you're interested in babbling in this lifestyle or getting back into it, however you want to say, then that makes perfect sense. There's 9 different conversations on FetLife with different people, and you have all of the FetLife communications. And you can see, why would you have discussions where you're bringing things like no marks, anything like that? All you need is one if you're going to carry out what the government's theory is. Why would you give anyone details about your work or your home or your husband if you were catfishing? I mean, if it's truly catfishing, you're looking for the biggest pile of people that might be considered. If you're telling someone that you have a husband and you want them to come over to the house, why would anybody come? You're losing the potential people that you might want to have there who are violent or...
I mean, mean, just because you catfish, it doesn't mean you're a great catfisher. It was probably their first time catfishing.
You know, love to do all the things that Juliana has said. Why would you do that if you're catfishing? It doesn't make sense. On February 13th, 2023, why would there be generic research on secure apps for communications? In fact, why was there even a need to transition to Telegram? Because if you're on FetLife, it's clear there are FetLife communications. And so in the world of catfishing, if you think about it, you want to do as few things that can get you caught. So what was the leap to Telegram? It doesn't make any sense. In fact, this whole theory doesn't make any sense. And the only way the government can make any sense of it is if Juliana Perez Magalhaes adopts their story once again. As late as February 19th, which would be 5 days before Christine Banfield's death. Under the government's theory, there were dates that were being explored with 5 different FetLife users. Why? If Joe's already coming, why? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Juliana Perez Magalhaes is doing what probably anyone would do who's from another country, who comes here for an adventure, which is what au pair exchange is. It's essentially a cultural exchange. And the idea is you get to live in the country and you get to live like people in the United States. And then you go back at the end of your time. She knew at the point when she was hospitalized to the point of sickness as a result of what was going on in her life that she had to do something. And the Commonwealth and the police broke her. She turned down a misdemeanor, according to her, in January, on January 1st, and you'll see it in the communications. She turned down a misdemeanor, and all she had to do was testify against Brendan. In July, you hear her recounting her meeting with her lawyer, where her lawyer...
Yeah, I don't know, man, because like the attorney, I'm so curious about that, because the attorney that's representing her is supposed to look out for her best interest, but that attorney was paid for Brendan's mom. So yes, he should have told her to take that plea deal for the misdemeanor, but at the same time, Brendan's family wouldn't want her to take the misdemeanor, because then she would have to testify against Brendan. I don't know. I kind of wonder about that just a little bit.
Floats the idea, well, what about a manslaughter, time served, and you don't have to testify against Brendan. She agreed to that. That was never what they were talking about. That was never what they wanted to do. You heard from Sergeant Matt Nilsson, who briefly came in, and he was one of the homicide people during the time of the killing of Christine Banfield. He's since rotated out to another division. But he came in and he said the whole goal of arresting Juliana was to flip her against Brendan. Once again, further corroboration. We knew it, we saw it from her letters, and now you have someone who was involved saying, yeah, that was what we wanted to do. That's why we did it. They broke her.
They broke her. She said she had a guilty conscience, that the truth needed to be known, and she just wanted to tell the truth, which I could see that.
The blood work and the blood testimony. It was suggested by the Commonwealth that we hadn't proven anything. The Commonwealth had not shown anything. Well, I beg to differ. You heard from Leanne Singley. Leanne Singley is an expert. She's an expert with tremendous credentials, and she's an expert in truth in terms of what she's allowed to say, what she can say, what she can't say. And she speaks to you in the language of bloodstaining pattern analysis. She's not talking about possibilities, she's talking about facts. She's a scientist. Her counterpart from the Commonwealth was willing to entertain any possibilities. In fact, questioning of her was, well, isn't it possible this? Isn't it possible this? Isn't it possible this? And oftentimes you would hear her respond, well, that wouldn't be something that I would have expected to see, which is a very interesting statement if you think about it.
Hold on a second. Wait, okay, how much more do you think his closing argument's going to be? Can we throw some guesses in the chat? Do you think we're like at the end? We think we're like nearing there? Do you think we got another 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes? What do you guys think? Where are we at right now? Because I am behind by 9 minutes. 9 minutes. And I see that the court is on a short break, but I'm looking at the chat in the court TV chat, and they don't look very happy. Middle? Okay, we might be in the middle. We might be in the middle. 5 minutes. That's what I was saying. I was like, okay, we're wrapping up, right? We're almost done, right? Nah, dude. We got another 40 more minutes to go. Oh.
What is it that she's expecting to see? Which makes you wonder, who's telling her what she should be seeing? And does it fit the narrative? So let's go to Leanne Singley. She tells you,
Listen, he just wants to be thorough.
of the account of the events. Ryan stabbed Christine in the neck. Brendan shot Ryan in self-defense. Brendan rendering aid to Christine. Ryan moved toward Brendan and grabbed Brendan's arm. You see that in the videos. And Juliana shot Ryan to end the threat.
I'm gonna check on my glasses.
What Leanne Singley tells you is all of the blood evidence supports this. Ryan brought the knife. That'll be Commonwealth's Exhibit 10. The knife has blood on it with Christine's DNA on the blade and Ryan's DNA on the handle. Ryan has Christine's blood on his hand as well as a puncture wound, which the medical examiner says is consistent with the knife. And if you look at the knife, it's described.
Oh, Joe, maybe he's gonna get into the blood DNA about getting on the waistband of Joe Ryan's and then the button. A puncture wound,
Which the medical examiner says is consistent with the knife. And if you look at the knife, it's described.
I think she said it could be consistent. I think that's what she said. I feel like it wasn't like 100% certainty.
Described in the certificates of analysis as testing underneath the handle by the edge of the blade. And if you look at the marks on Joseph Ryan's hand, the medical examiner states that these wounds are consistent with that knife. Which reminds me, the medical also.
But the way that she said it, I think left room for it could also not be consistent. I don't know. I don't remember her being like 100% like certain, like, yeah, it's consistent with it. I think she was like, yeah, it could be consistent with it. Who's running down the street? Someone's late for school right now. I see some kid running down the street. Oh man, you better get there before the school bell rings. Say it ain't so. Listen, we're all here together, okay? We'll make it fun. We'll make it interesting. We'll try.
The examiner also said that
we got this.
Joe Ryan was capable of movement. And you can recall your own notes on that. That was very clear, which is in absolute conflict with.
He was capable of movement after the first shot. Capable.
Ms. Groff. And is in absolute conflict.
But you're telling me that I think he needs to be more clear about the whole butt in the waistband thing. Because when we listened to the state prosecution, she left with, so you're telling me that Joe Ryan, after getting shot with the encounter of the husband busted on in with the all pair, you're telling me that after he got shot, that's when he was bleeding and that's when he decided to start unbuttoning his waistband and his button on his jeans? I think he needs to be more clear to address and attack that.
Conflict with the Commonwealth's theory.
Oh, he's in conflict with the Commonwealth's theory. Sir, be more clear about it.
Ms. Groff. And is in absolute conflict with the Commonwealth's theory. She further goes on to say, Ryan has the blood on his hand shows his hand was closed when the blood was deposited. That's that closed fingers we were talking about. That's what the Commonwealth was talking about in terms of having nothing going in between the fingers. That's holding a knife. That's how that happens, because you're holding it very rigid in order to do that.
I guess it's a pretty good explanation, actually. But he didn't have a knife in his hand when he died. Right? You would think that I guess it depends on how much blood is on the knuckles. Like, the blood would start bleeding through between the knuckles.
Bloody handprint on Ryan's thigh is consistent with him touching his own leg with his bloody hands. That's Ms. Groff. The stains on Brendan's jeans and shirt are what you expect he would get while giving aid to Christine. And we see it. We see it on the body-worn camera. We see it on the still shots. He's leaning down. He's down there on his knees. Interestingly, Ms. Groff says, all I saw was his hands around Christine's neck. I don't know that that's not accurate, but that's probably not what was really going on there, because everyone else said he was rendering aid. The police witnesses, who are more objective than the expert witness for the Commonwealth, all say that he was rendering aid. Testimony by Ms. Groff and the ME indicated that Ryan could move after the gunshot. And what's most important is that there's a DNA mixture of Christine and Ryan on the arm of the jacket where Brendan said he was grabbed. 3 times. 3 times when he was being told by the first responders, go into the...
Did you guys catch that? The state attorney looked up at him when he said that.
DNA mixture of Christine and Ryan on the arm of the jacket where Brendan said he was grabbed. 3 times. 3 times when he was being told by the first responders, go into the bathroom. He said, they're asking, is he okay? He hit me on the right side under the shoulder blade by the arm. He said that. Then in the ambulance, you'll hear that. He says, when they're asking, are you okay? Are you okay? I don't think I'm injured, but he did hit me on the backside of my jacket. In the ambulance, they grabbed the jacket. And then when he was in the hospital, the doctor asked, and he says, he hit me on the back, but I'm not injured.
I thought he said he didn't realize that he got hit from behind. Because, like, as his wife is bleeding out, when would him and Juliana have time to be like, hey, that guy totally hit you from behind. That's why you shot him, right? You know what I mean? Like, when he was testifying the same, he was like, oh, I didn't realize that happened. But for some reason, when he was at the hospital, he knew that.
The critical part of that is that the DNA mixture of Christine's blood and Joe Ryan's blood on the jacket was, if you were listening to my client yesterday, he tells you that that was Joe Ryan after he shot him. That mixture of blood with Christine and Joe Ryan himself had to be after Joe Ryan had stabbed Christine in the neck. And that's the way her blood would get on him in order to be able to get the back of my client's jacket. That's what the Singley says. And that's why the Commonwealth is so intent on saying this had to have been on the floor, this had to have been on the bed. But there's no evidence to support that. There's a story to support it, but there's no evidence to support that. The evidence in terms of what happened in that room, and the crucial evidence, is spot A on the back of the jacket, and you have it in evidence, and you also have it under Commonwealth's Exhibit 160, 161, and 167. Now, let's just talk a little bit about the prosecution's evidence. Brendan's DNA is not on the knife. That's also supported by those same forensics reports. He doesn't have any injuries to his hands. That was confirmed by EMTs. In fact, poor officer, I'm sorry, the young man who was 1 year on, I forget his name now, he was brought up to introduce his video and then was asked, well, why'd you let him wash his hands? And you can see my client, for a period of probably 40 minutes, is literally walking around, you know, in a trance from what he was just involved with, and he was walking around with blood all over his hands. And it was only after he was told that his wife had died, and the emotions that come from that, where he was blowing his nose and wiping his eyes and doing all those things, it was offered for him to wash his hands. But that appears to be some sort of
by the doctor.
A horrible thing that this officer allowed him to do, and it was even an insinuation that my client was trying to cover something up. This was 45 minutes later. It wasn't as though he went into the bathroom and did it right there after being removed from rendering aid. Brendan's DNA does not show up anywhere on Joe Ryan, which is consistent with what he told you, which is that he never touched Joe Ryan. There's no indication that there was any sort of movement, and frankly, what's the possibility, I guess I'll use the same word, that a 185-pound man would have been moved if he was otherwise dead? It's not an easy task. And Brendan Banfield's an athletic guy, but I don't think he's up.
But he a weakling. I mean, with 2 people that were gymming around that time, you know, it's possible.
To moving 200 pounds in that sort of way. So that's an absolute red herring in this.
Is it a red herring?
When
Mr. Kuros, do you have quite a bit more? I just want to give you a chance to
probably
complete.
about another half hour.
Yes, let's go ahead and take our
Oh, he's got another 30 minutes.
Morning recess for 15 minutes. Please do not discuss the case at this time and do not do any outside research.
Oh, he's got another 30 minutes left. All right. They're going to go on a short break. I'll be right back. I got to use the bathroom and yeah, we'll resume with his closing argument. Okay, are they back yet? Let's hope I hope they're back. Yes, they're back. Perfect timing. Hello, hello, hello. All right. Way. I can't wait to take a nap. I'm so tired. I woke up at like 5:30 this morning. I'm gonna take a nap and hopefully I don't miss the
Here, you can continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
the verdict if it comes out today. Whew.
Ladies and gentlemen, we left
Oh my god, is that Bleep? Hello, how are you doing today? What's going on? Hello, hello. He would have been better off not making. He would have been better off not making a statement. No, I mean you still got to make your closing argument, but like, he just needs to move it along. You know, move it along a little bit. Wait, back from the vet. Are your puppers okay, or is it the cat? Pupper? Oh my gosh, so did my dog. My dog had an eye thing too. And we took him to the vet, and by the time he went there, it cleared up. But luckily, I had some medication, some leftover medication that I put on, that I gave him before we went on vacation. But yeah, always getting into trouble.
off
All
in
right, guys, I just want to say this though. I'm so sorry, but before I was listening to him on like 1.5 times speed. Now that we are fully caught up, we're gonna have to listen to him at 1 time speed. Maybe like sped up slightly because we're a tiny bit behind. But yeah, it might be even more. It might feel even more dragged out.
discussion of the blood stain pattern analysis. And what was an interesting moment in terms of the experts was when there was talk of blood stain inside the zipper and around that area.
Yes,
But
address
if
that.
you look at the DLI report, which is number 169, you'll see in that report, they were looking actually for touch DNA. They weren't actually looking for blood staining. They identified blood staining, but the whole point of it was to find Brendan Banfield's touch DNA on the inside of Joe's pants based upon some theory that he was either pulling the pants off or moving them or something like that. And that was one of the reasons why they went to a private lab to try to do that, and it didn't pan out. And you'll see the report. Now, in terms of the evidence on the bloodstain pattern analysis, let me just do a rundown. With regard to the knife, it was identified as being bloodstained. Leanne Singley said that. She negated the possibility of anything being wiped off, which might be one of the things that you might find in a situation of the nature of the government's theory, but she's negated that. That it contained DNA of Christine and Ryan, and Brendan was excluded. That Joe Ryan's DNA at the base of the blade.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn him down just a little bit. He's pretty loud. She's fine. Just a wonky eye at the moment. Oh, poor Bubba. Yeah, allergy related stuff. Dude, I felt so bad when my dog had a an ulcer. It was so sad because someone told me in my chat that an ulcer feels like you have sand in your eye like constantly. It really sucks. And they could take a while to heal.
Handle juncture. That was the testimony of Leanne Singley and also confirmed by the Division of Forensic Science. That Ryan had a puncture to the left thumb. That was Leanne Singley's testimony, as well as the medical examiner, Dr. Kessler, confirmed that.
She said it could be consistent, I think.
It was consistent with the knife, Dr. Kessler said, and it was consistent with the self-wounding that happens in situations involving stabbings. And you heard Leanne Singley touch on that. She was able to kind of give you a more circumspect view of what self-wounding was. I think Ms. Groff talked about slicing, fingers or it sliding or something like that. What we were looking for, and what I think Leanne Singley was able to tell you, is that there are a wide variety of injuries that occur, but oftentimes the stabber is someone that's injured. And I think there were significant statistics that she talked about, which I won't try. You'll have to rely on your recollections regarding that. You saw on the body cam footage, as well as through Ms. Singley's testimony, that Brendan does not have any injuries on his hands. And Ms. Dolly's testimony indicates Ryan's right hand closed when blood was deposited on it. That's consistent with Ryan holding the knife when stabbing, causing blood stains. Joe Ryan.
I think it's a pretty decent explanation. But the knife didn't stay in his hand, though. At some point, he didn't have possession of the knife anymore. And I would feel like the blood would still kind of like bleed through. And then wouldn't he try to like stop his bleeding? I don't know.
There's a lot to be said, and I think you've already seen pictures of it in this closing, of the 4 stains on Ryan's forearm. What hasn't been said is that they were not tested. Leanne Singley says they're not able to be classified. Ms. Groff disagrees, saying that they are drip stains. She needs to say they're drip stains, which Leanne Singley says you can't say because you don't know the position of the arm, you don't know where it was at the time the blood came out. It could have been something from a significant bleeder as he's standing up. It could have been from numerous other possibilities. But Ms. Groff classifies something that Ms. Singley says you can't classify without certain factors, suggesting that it's falling from above and has Ryan on the floor. One might think you'd find the source of whatever that blood is if you're to have tested the blood that's in question. That might give you a little more guidance. And I think that's one of the reasons Leanne Singley was unable to identify that. If it was from Joe, then she'd probably have some explanation for that as an expert. If it was from anyone else, that perhaps could be a different explanation. But now all we deal with are possibilities. And that seems to be the crux of how the Commonwealth is pursuing this case. They're not.
Oh, thank you, Burning. Really, I feel like I struggle so much with that. I've been trying to work at being a better storyteller because there's just some people that I watch, like they're just like natural born storytellers. I think my issue is that I talk too fast sometimes and I get a little ahead of myself. But that's what I was like trying to work on the most. But thank you so much. I really appreciate that feedback. I will definitely try to do better as well. Yeah, it's so hard. It looks easy, it looks effortless, but when you try to do it, it's like, I don't know, it's so difficult.
Putting on any evidence
Thank
in
you.
terms of their own investigators. They're not providing any concrete evidence as to what happened that day. And interestingly enough, the shift in the last closing argument was that I hadn't been doing that. And the defense hadn't been doing that. But I think we can all agree that we've called significantly greater number of police witnesses because we had to.
You did, and I feel like it destroyed your case even more. It was day 6. Day 6 when he called upon all these detectives, people who worked in law enforcement, and oh my goodness, it was not good for him because he was trying to elicit testimony that would say that like, oh, you know, we all didn't get along with each other. We were forced to choose this theory from the beginning of the case. You know, we didn't follow the evidence, but oh my gosh, when he was doing the direct examination, it just wasn't working very well. And then in cross-examination, of course, the state would just clear it up even more. I think day 6 was like one of the most disastrous day for him. Almost as bad as having his defendant testify. I don't know. I feel like they're both were really bad. It was just like boom, 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 like just downhill all the way through.
Because we want the truth out here.
Hey, Reese, what's up?
I called my client, though he has the absolute right not to come up and testify? And he testified. And the relationship issues with Juliana Perez Magalhaes are touchy, and they're an awful story. But he said,
What? Touchy and what? Oh, same judge from the Deputy Heard trial from 5 years ago. Health as well. I agree with that. Wait, hold on a second.
come up and testify.
So, okay, he's explaining as to why he called up his client to testify. Sir, do you regret it?
I called my client, though he has the absolute right not to come up and testify.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he testified.
He did.
And the relationship issues with Juliana Perez Magalhaes are touchy, and they're an awful story.
Okay. Touchy and an awful story, all right?
But he sat there and he answered the questions. He was cross-examined. He answered those questions.
He was squirming.
We're bringing you the truth. We're trying in every way to get the truth. And many of the Fairfax County detectives have provided that, and that goes to their integrity.
Can I deviate for a second here? This is one of my favorite moments, okay? This is the defense's witness, by the way, okay? Defense's witness. So they were talking about Detective Miller's executive summary. And remember, Detective Miller's the one that got transferred over to child sex crimes because everyone was like, hey, your analysis is incorrect. And I guess the guy was like not willing to change it or something. Like, I don't know. But they transferred it out of there, didn't disagree with anyone. And the detective was like, well, you looked over his work, right? He's like, yeah, I did. And I didn't agree with it, basically. And then the defense attorney was like, well, what's your background? Like, do you even have like the credentials? So he didn't say it like that, but that's what it was alluding to. Let me see if I can find it. Right here.
You,
Real quick.
so you decided that Detective Miller was not going to be, I think as you said, involved in any other major crimes while you were there.
Any of the digital forensics for the major crimes cases, correct?
And then he was transferred.
Within weeks, I would say, yes, sir.
Okay. And what was your basis for that?
So there were a few factors. Would you like me to expand on this?
Were they related to this case?
Yes, sir.
Exclusively related to this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was it related to his work product?
Yes, sir.
And are you talking about the executive summary work product?
That was part of it.
Okay. And so
Part of it.
his conclusions were not agreeable to you?
I wouldn't word that way.
How would you word it?
I would word it that his analysis was incorrect.
Okay. And at that time, when you determined his analysis wasn't correct, had you had any training in digital forensics?
I have my master's in computer forensics.
Okay. So did you look at
I was like, wait a second. Did the defense attorney not know that? He's like, sir, I have my master in computer forensics. Anyways, one of my favorite moments from day 6. There was a lot of favorite moments actually from day 6. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the defense attorney really stepped into that one, didn't he? Just step it in shit.
any of the Fairfax County detectives have provided that, and that goes to their integrity.
It's like, the glasses too.
The genes, the touch DNA from the waistband zipper indicate Joe Ryan and Christine Banfield are the contributors. Brendan Banfield is excluded. All samples collected and tested on Ryan were from Joe Ryan or Christine. Brendan not identified as a contributor in any of them. Nothing in the materials reviewed gave any indication that Ryan was not the stabber. That was Leanne Singley's testimony. Brendan's jacket, blood on the rear of the right sleeve, DNA on exterior of right sleeve, mix of Ryan and Christine. Brendan indicates that Ryan grabbed his arm. On Officer Beckner's video, Officer Baumler's video, in the ambulance, and also in the hospital. Brendan's jeans The small stains on the thigh is consistent with cast off from the hands. That's Miss Dolly, Miss Groff. Brendan sat in the bathroom, if you look on the video, and the first responders arrived. He was basically told to sit on the tub, and you see him when you look at that video, and he's sitting there, and he's just, hands down, not sure where his hands go, and he was watching as his wife was being tended to.
You have yet to see a trial that tops Depp v. Heard. Oh my goodness. Remember the ending of the Alec, what's his name again? Alec Baldwin. Oh my gosh. You guys remember like the ending with Alec Baldwin and the state prosecution? That was like, that moment in itself was so explosive. Oh my gosh. That was a wild moment. I would say that was probably one of the closest. That, and then, us finding out that Murdoch was in the Snapchat footage with his voice in the background. That was pretty wild too. Yeah, we've had some wild moments in cases. But yeah, Depp v. Heard was just like compounded, like one over the other on the other. Like it was just wild. She put herself on the stand. The judge was like, ma'am, you don't have to do, no, I'm going to go up there. I'm going to go up there and testify. Okay, you do your thing. And then there was another case that I didn't cover, but the one with, in Georgia, I think the prosecutor's name was like Fanny something, where dude, I think she was watching the live stream of the testimony and she like heard her name being brought up. So she was like, I ran my ass like all the way down to like the courthouse so I can come here and testify. And she went up there and started testifying. And then they started going into her relationship with her co-counsel at the time or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was also really wild. But I didn't cover that case.
The stains on Brendan's jeans are consistent with him kneeling at Christine giving aid. That's what the body cam video shows. Back to the digital forensics for a moment. February 19th was a critical day, because that was the beginning of the Telegram account. Juliana says she watched Brendan. They stole the laptop and the phone. They deleted the two-factor authentication code.
Wait, I thought they didn't delete the two-factor authentication code. I could have sworn he had an expert that testified saying that text message was never deleted. Because then I was like, oh, well, that's actually kind of a big deal then, if it just still lingered on Christine's cell phone.
But the two-factor authentication code remains on the phone to this day. And this is Defense Exhibit 156.
Oh, is it 156?
And this is Defense Exhibit 156.
All right, let me see if I can find it. 156.
Is it possible?
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I wonder if, honestly, I just wonder if they just forgot. Telegram code 69906. You can also tap on this link to log in. Interesting. I wonder if the code came in late and Christine had already seen it by that point. And then she was like, wait, what is this? And then Brendan's like, oh, I have no idea. Oh my God, maybe someone like used your phone number to create a Telegram account by accident. And she's like, oh, yeah, maybe. And at that point, he had no reason to delete it. I don't know. But I think that is pretty interesting, though, if it was not deleted. That could also go to the defense's story that Christine was the one who made the Telegram account. But, I think there's too much evidence to rebut that.
That Brendan and Juliana did this without Christine knowing that a Telegram account was opened in her name? It's not, based upon this exhibit. Because if you look at it, and you can look at...
Oh my gosh, I think Dr. Curry is still my... I haven't changed my Discord photo, but it's still Dr. Curry. I should probably change it to something else.
The message from Telegram shows up right underneath a message from Brad of Innova PICU, and right above a message from Nicole at Nova PQ.
Hey.
It was done early in the morning.
No.
If it had been done by someone other than herself, as soon as she looks at that message from Nicole, she'd realize something's going on. I should check this out. Inconsistent with catfishing and consistent with someone pursuing a fantasy. February 23rd. We saw digital forensics evidence from the evening of February 23rd. We saw use of Christine's laptop for February. Because if you look at it, and you can look at, is it possible that Brendan and Juliana did this without Christine knowing that a Telegram account was opened in her name?
Sorry.
It's not, based on this exhibit.
The puppy?
Because if you look at it, and you can look at
If I can get him.
the message from Telegram shows up right underneath a message from Brad of a Nova PICU, and right above a message from Nicole at a Nova PICU. It was done early in the morning. If it had been done by someone other than herself, as soon as she looks at that message from Nicole, she'd realize something's going on. I should check this out. Inconsistent with catfishing and consistent with someone pursuing a fantasy.
You want it, sure?
February 23rd. We saw digital forensics evidence from the evening of February 23rd. We saw use of Christine's laptop for 90 minutes for resort searches, with a couple of minutes of Telegram use interspersed. The Commonwealth in cross-examination.
He looks like a little wild wolf, doesn't he? Like a little wolf dog. Little lassie. Little lassie. He's kind of small. He's 20, almost 23 pounds. But he's about 13 months right now. So I don't know if he's just gonna be a small little guy. Are you gonna be a small guy? He's just very floofy. So he looks like the same size as Shiro.
Opined, well, wouldn't it be possible that even if you were sitting in the same room, that she could have gone away to go to the bathroom for 2 minutes?
Yep.
And I guess,
Why are we reminding the jury about this, sir?
you know, in this world, anything's possible. Is it probable, however? And that's really the more germane point to this.
Ooh, germane.
The Commonwealth's, I guess,
Threw in a big word there.
concern in cross-examination was confirmed, at least in terms of the room, when Brendan testified. And if you recall his discussion, we were talking about, we were already going on a cruise and we were talking about going to the Dominican Republic. We saw the calendar that showed the place, Royalton Resorts. We showed the searches that showed kid-friendly vacations. So we knew who was behind the keyboard, and Brendan knew who was behind the keyboard because he was there with Christine. And they were collaborating on the vacation research. Brendan was playing with Valerie, and Christine was on the couch with her laptop and her phone. That's the testimony. The device's symmetry and connectivity you heard about has the context to complete the entire picture. Juliana was not in the room, and this is supported by the analysis on her phone, showing a steady stream of messaging, social media use, and Netflix at the same time that Telegram, FetLife, and the suspect Gmail account were being used by Christine. And finally, February 24th, Juliana was not awake and not out of bed based on her devices at the time she claimed to be watching Brendan Banfield sending messages in the kitchen. You heard Mr. Litsky talk about her Apple Watch. You heard him talk about her phone. We're showing when steps were showing, which would be an indication of someone moving. She had not moved for some
Who's gonna win? Mephisto.
time after the laptop was accessed. What we know from the testimony yesterday was that Christine Banfield had the laptop and the phone in her bedroom and was awake when he went up to retrieve Valerie. That is an artifact in the world of digital forensic analysis. And you'll see this entire exchange, Defense Exhibit 348, 349, 350. You'll see Juliana Perez Magalhaes' first steps at 626, Defense Exhibit 351, 352, and 353. Juliana Perez starts her day after the telegram message is already sent, in conflict with what she's told, in conflict with the story that she's adopted on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Is he Wait a second. Is he not? Hold on a second. We don't see the exhibits and the presentations. I know the state had a presentation. Does he not have a presentation? Is he just reading off the script and then does the jury have anything to look at? Anything? I don't think they do. Because I don't see him moving, like clicking anything, or maybe his co-counsel or paralegals doing it. I don't know. It just seems like he's just like reading off to them. We need visual aids. Visual aids. Sir.
Brendan's at McDonald's. Exhibit 354, 355, 356. Those are timestamped screenshots from the McDonald's videos. Juliana is on the phone telling us, her phone tells us that her activity stops at 7:24 under Defense Exhibit 357. At the exact same time, her watch steps are stopping at 7:24. Defense Exhibit number 358. Defense Exhibit 359, Juliana steps resuming on the phone at 7:41. Exhibit 360, Juliana, car is parked at 7:41. Exhibit 361, Juliana's watch resuming steps at 7:42. We know that Brendan was out of the house. We know that Juliana was in her car. And if you look at Exhibit 362, there's someone who's logging into Christine's laptop at 7:33.
It always concerns me. I don't know if he did or he might have alluded to it, but whenever there's an attorney that professes that they don't know how to use technology, I don't know, man. That's always a huge red flag for me. I know maybe they're trying to relate to some of the jurors on the to some of the jurors that are maybe like a little bit older, and maybe they can like have a giggle with that. But it's like, no, man, if you're an attorney and you're like, I don't know too much about digital stuff, like I'm not good with computers, like that's a huge red flag for me, sir. Like you need to be up to date with all the stuff that's happening.
There are no other humans in the house. And Juliana and Brendan were not there. In conflict with the government's theory, Christine logs into her laptop and places her devices in a drawer. She puts the devices away. She gets Lily down into the basement, brings her food to the basement, and gates her in. And she meets Joe Ryan. And they walk up to the master bedroom. Why? Why would Joe Ryan stab Christine?
Exactly.
If you take away the consensual part.
Wait, I forget. I know he used to be prosecution, but like, oh my gosh, he keeps reminding the jury some of the evidence that the state is pushing, you know? Like, I feel like if you're going to do that, then whatever you say to negate that needs to be like, boom, you know? It needs to come in with like forceful impact. But none of that's really happening. He's just reminding the jury the evidence against his client and kind of just like leaving it at that, you know? We need the bangers.
Why would Joe Ryan stab Christine?
You tell me.
If you take away the consensual part of this, if he were found in a bedroom of someone by someone who's a police officer, he'd be looking at a life sentence.
Huh?
In this instance, he was confronted by an armed law enforcement officer saying police.
I know, and then he would just drop the knife and be like, hey, we're just playing around. Like, you know, this is all consensual. Why then take the wife hostage and then start stabbing the wife when the guy had a gun? It just doesn't make sense.
That officer was standing in the only way to get out of that room, other than jumping through the window and falling down 3 flights. He had a gun trained on him, and he was telling him and was told that he was going to be arrested. He had marijuana in his system.
I don't know. I have questions too. I think when we think of IRS agent, we probably think like of a boring person who's behind the desk all the time. I think they were doing some pretty interesting work actually, like field work stuff, because his coworker that testified, that was his supervisor, was talking about how he was doing undercover work in Baltimore. And I don't know, it seems like these type of IRS agents, they had a badge and they had a firearm. Now I'm curious. I'm like, damn, what are they doing? What kind of work are they doing? Am I mainly on Twitch or YouTube? Both. I mean, it's whatever is easier for you guys. Some people like Twitch better. Some people like YouTube better. For me, YouTube is just easier to skip through the ads, if I'm going to be honest. Like, you guys don't have YouTube Premium. So I've always been a YouTube watcher. And I like how YouTube is like a player. You can rewind it back and forth. With Twitch, you can't do that. You're just stuck with the live. And then I think you could go back and click on the what is it called again on Twitch? I don't know. There's like these different terms, the broadcast or something. And then like you might be able to rewind it back and forth. But on YouTube, it's like a player. I like going back and forth with this.
And he was angry. Who was he angry at? Could he have been angry at Christine, thinking that she set him up?
What, that angry that he decides to just murder her on the spot? Like Joe Ryan all of a sudden has anger issues now? Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for Joe's family, just having to listen to all this.
Could he have been angry at his situation for deciding to go into a house that he didn't know and put himself in this situation? Could he be angry at my client, who was there to try to figure out what was going on and ultimately try to protect his wife?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Those are the whys. And if we'd had any investigators that were actually involved in the case coming to the stand, those would be questions that I would want to know, and they would be questions that you would want to know. Because you have a decision before you, and that decision requires a review of all of the evidence. Now, is it reasonable after a 6 to 8 week affair that someone's going to try to get rid of their companion of 19 years, wife of 12 years? Is that?
No, exactly. We were wondering the same thing, but I don't know, man. Maybe your client is just head over heels in love and was just really surprised that a young girl would be into him. And he was just willing to do whatever it took to pursue that new love interest. Remy, ball stuck in there? The ball is stuck. Hold on.
Is that reasonable? You heard from my client. He thinks it's absurd. In pursuing this case, the Commonwealth has presented absolutely no forensics evidence that supports that Brendan Banfield had anything to do with this, yet the story continues. This isn't how justice works, and you can't just come up with a theory and make it fit. They're trying to sell you a story without any facts, and we have the facts, and those facts are in evidence. Those jury instructions, when you see them, you'll realize they're very clear. If you have doubts about the investigation, if you have doubts about how they've conducted this investigation, if you believe that there's something that's been held back in this investigation, that's reasonable doubt. That's reasonable doubt before you even get into the things that negate the possibilities of their case. And these are hard decisions. There's a lot on the line. But know this, if they fell short in what you expect should be the investigation, if they fell short, that's not on you. The jury instructions say you must acquit. And it's not on you.
All right. Are we done? Almost done? No, just kidding. We're
I
not
don't
done.
have another opportunity to talk to you. It's their burden to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, so they get the opportunity to speak. So I apologize if I've gone too long, but I wanted to make sure that these important issues came before you. And I leave you with these words. When they lie and manipulate to get someone to make a statement, that's not discovering the truth. That's planting the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience. And at the end of your deliberations, I ask that you find my client not guilty of all charges. Thank you.
All right. Rebuttal argument.
All right, guys.
Switch over to Mike again.
Rebuttal. Whoops, am I muted? Okay, I was just reading the poll to you guys. I was like, what do you guys think of the state's or defense's closing argument? And then also, here's the poll so far for the state's closing. 50% had my full attention, 17% lost me at times, mostly okay, 31% it was so-so, and 3% horrible. So we'll do a new poll with the defense. And the reason why I had it muted is because my dog is barking because he's trying to get a ball right now that's stuck underneath my computer. He plays this game where he likes to shove the ball underneath my computer and see if he can get it. And if he can't get it, then he starts yapping. All right, give me a second. All right, let's do another poll. All right, start a poll. How was defense's closing? Remy, hold on a second. Had my full attention. Lost me at times, mostly okay. So. And horrible. All right, guys, new poll. Please vote. What are your guys' thoughts on the closing arguments by the defense counsel? Remy's like one of the jury. Yep.
Thanks. All right, just a couple of last words. Mr. Carroll has a really interesting recollection of the evidence. It certainly doesn't match ours, and I'm guessing it doesn't match yours. FYI, the lab for the coat was 165, not 167. And the DLI lab, it doesn't say anywhere on it that it was touch DNA. It was blood that they tested. Juliana did not repeatedly say that she didn't know how to work Gmail. She said that she did not create the Gmail account, that was Brendan.
Yeah, because I was like, Juliana uses Gmail, so how would she not know how to work Gmail? Her personal email was a Gmail.
Giacho and Bruce had the catfish plan, and they peddled it and pushed it to everyone. I don't think that's at all what came out. I think that Mr. Carroll is trying to focus on the HR woes of the Fairfax County Police Department to distract you from the fact that the evidence actually supported that theory, and that he has provided you, and his client has provided you with absolutely nothing to refute that theory. Why was there so much discussion and disagreement over the digital evidence? Because it could never be that smoking gun. You all heard it from their expert. You can't put someone behind that screen unless you're sitting next to them.
Yep.
So as much as we want it to tell the story here, as much as we want it to be the perfect evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that this thing had to happen, the digital evidence just isn't that. We wish it were, but it's not. And Detective Miller did nothing wrong, and Mr. Lidsky did nothing wrong. They just told you the truth. And the truth is that they can tell you what a device was doing, but they can't tell you who was using the device. Juliana Perez Magalhães' testimony was bought and paid for. Yes, she pled guilty to a lesser offense in exchange for her testimony. Ms. Frisler made sure you knew that from the get-go. Juliana talked about that. She explained for her reasons why. Nothing was hidden. After her sentence, it sounds like she might have the opportunity to make, 10 grand off of selling her story. She said that she would use that to support her family. And then what? Is she gonna work as a nanny? I mean, she's a convicted murderer. Do we really think that it is so reasonable that she made up this complete lie for 10 grand? Really? If this version is correct.
That's a good point. It's like, yeah, 10 grand is a lot, but at the same time, a lot of loss of job opportunities when you're a convicted murderer.
Coming from Mr. Banfield, then she would be set free. She would be as not guilty as he would be. So she's gonna give up that shot for 10 grand? I just don't buy it. Whose story is more credible here? Juliana's or Mr. Banfield's? Whose version does the rest of the evidence support? The defendant took the stand and he lied. And he lied about collateral matters. He told you that he had does the rest? I just don't buy it. Whose story is more credible here? Juliana's or Mr. Banfield's? Whose version does the rest of the evidence support? The defendant took the stand and he lied. And he lied about collateral matters. He told you that he had a big career-defining work meeting the morning of the murder. And then you heard from...
But he didn't, because his coworker decided to last minute testify and say, actually, I was his supervisor and I was busy doing undercover work in Baltimore. And the other person that would have been his supervisor, well, she was out of the country. So there was no big meeting that was supposed to happen in the day that his wife was murdered. Oh man, did that destroy his credibility.
About collateral matters. He told you that he had a big career-defining work meeting the morning of the murder. And then you heard from his boss, who said, no, he didn't. He lied. He said that he and Juliana did not have a plan to kill Christine at the time that they went to the shooting range. Well, he said, not at that time. If he's lying about the things that don't matter, how can you believe a single word he said?
True.
And ladies and gentlemen, you have to do that in this case, because without some alternate theory, the Commonwealth's evidence is uncontroverted. So you got to pick one. Juliana, Mr. Banfield. Whose story does the evidence support? All of that blood, the DNA, to some extent, the digital forensics, the physical evidence collected at the scene. That's what you can rely on.
I like her voice. I'm okay with her voice.
Narrative and his recollection of the evidence. For that reason, don't rely on mine or on Ms. Rissler's. Rely on yours. It is your collective recollection of the evidence that you have heard that is controlling. You know what was said here. You know what the evidence is. We trust you to make the decision. Thank you.
Short, simple, straight to the point. I'm so glad the defense doesn't get a, what's it called, a server rebuttal.
Members of the jury, this is an important
If he did, it might have been another 30 minutes, y'all.
case to both the Commonwealth and the defendant. In order to reach a verdict, each of you must agree on that verdict. In other words, the verdict must be unanimous. The first thing you should do when you get back to the jury room is to select a presiding juror. The role of the presiding juror is to see to it that the deliberations are conducted in an orderly and businesslike manner, that they are conducted only in the jury room when all members of the jury are present, and that each juror has the opportunity to fully and fairly express his or her views. It is rarely helpful for jurors upon first entering the jury room to take a straw vote, or for any juror to make an emphatic expression of his or her opinion in the case, or to announce a determination to stand for a certain verdict. To do so before all jurors have had an opportunity to consult with one another and exchange views and opinions might allow your sense of pride to prevent you from retreating from an announced position, even when shown that such position is unsound. You have a duty to consult with one another and to deliberate with the objective of reaching an agreement, if it can be done without offending your individual judgment. Each of you must decide this case for yourself, but only after an impartial consideration of the evidence with your fellow jurors. In the course of deliberation, a juror should not hesitate to re-examine his or her own views and change his or her opinion if convinced it is an error. However, none of you should surrender your honest conviction as to the weight or effect of the evidence solely because of the opinion of your fellow jurors or for the mere purpose of returning a verdict. In the jury room, you will have the exhibits that were entered into evidence, you will have the instructions of law that I just read to you, and you will have the verdict forms. Much of the evidence in this case was in electronic files, so you're going to have a clean laptop that's going to have those files on there for you, and that you will be able to access. And you also have the big TV in the jury room that you can plug in the laptop to that so everybody can view the evidence at the same time, okay? As far as the firearms and knife, the Sheriff's Department has control of those items. If and when you want to see those items, you just have to let the deputy know, and those items will be brought to you. Only the deputy will handle them, but you can ask her to manipulate them however you wish to have them manipulated. But please do not have any deliberations while the deputy is in the room with you, okay? Wait till the deputy leaves before you do that, okay? All right, so during your deliberations, until you are discharged from jury service, you must not communicate with or provide any
Courthouse Becky, don't fuck this up, okay? I'm just kidding, she ain't here.
information to anyone who is not a member of this jury by any means about this case. You may not use any electronic device or media to conduct any independent research about this case, the legal or factual issues in the case, or the individuals or attorneys involved in the case. You are not permitted to consult dictionaries or reference materials, search the internet, visit websites or blogs, or use any other tool to obtain information about this case to help you decide the case. Do not try to find out information from any source outside the testimony and the exhibits received as evidence during the trial. You will have, again, you also have with you the verdict forms. There's 4 charges in front of you, okay? So you're going to have 4 separate verdict forms, all right? Once you have had made a decision, each of the verdict forms should have the 4-person signature at the appropriate place. There's places for guilty and not guilty for each count that you've heard, 2 aggravated murder counts, 1 firearm count, and 1 child endangerment count, okay? So each form is separately. So each form, upon the finishing of your deliberation, should have the signature of the foreperson just on 1 space on each form, okay? If you sign both places on the form, it gets confused. If we're confused, then that's not the way it works, okay? So just make sure you do that. Okay, now, for the last part before you deliberate, the fun part. You remember that in the beginning of this case, I told you we had randomly selected 4 people to be alternates, okay? We still have 4 alternates. Thank you all for your service and being so professional, and even during the snowstorm, making here on time, and we do appreciate that. And let me just say before I release the alternates that I know that this trial has been a huge sacrifice for you all and have taken you away from your lives for 3 weeks now. I know I speak for all of us associated with this case that I want to thank you for your service in this matter. I know it is hard to have come this far and then not get a chance to deliberate, but that does not lessen the respect and admiration that we have for you. As an alternate, you will not deliberate, but you will still be under the order of the court, okay? And so you cannot do any outside research at this time in the case, or you can't talk to anybody about this case at this time because you're still under oath as a juror. That is because if something happens to a juror during deliberations, I will call you back to service and deliberations would start again as you would be part of the jury as well. So that's why you're still under the order of the court. You are under these restrictions and your oath until a verdict is reached. Once a verdict is reached, we will reach out to you and contact you and let you know this has occurred, and then you are free from all your obligations, okay? So again, thank you for your service. At this time, I'll call the alternate jurors, and if you could go with the deputy, you have to collect your items, and we'll get you on your way, okay? So the alternate jurors I have are number 26, number 24, and number 38. So if you could follow Deputy Johnson out at this time. (26, 17, 24, and 38. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, these are the 12 jurors that are going to be deliberating in this case, okay? You can take as long as you need to deliberate, and at this point, you can take breaks whenever you wish to, and you can let the court know. If you're still deliberating next week, you can let the court know if you want to come in at 9, you can come in at 9, or if you want to come in at 10, that's fine. When you're done for the evening, I know there's one juror that has to be done by 4:30 today, so make sure we respect that timing for that juror. But you can take breaks whenever you wish. You can take your lunch breaks, and you can make them an hour, you can make them a half hour, you can do what you like. It's just important that you do not deliberate at any time unless all jurors are in that jury room at the same time, okay? So during breaks, we don't deliberate, okay? We make sure we take care of that. All right, do we have another deputy that can? All right, I can excuse you now to deliberate at this time if I have a deputy.
Judge, while we're waiting on that moment, can we approach on one?
Sure, sure.
You know what I just realized? I don't even know the prosecutor's name in this trial. Does anyone know? What's her name?
Gentlemen, just one more item before you deliberate. If for some reason
Oh, Jenna Sands. Oh, Miss Sands. Okay, I kept hearing someone say Miss Sands. I didn't know who they were talking to. That's the name of the prosecutor.
you have any issues with the laptop, please let the deputy know. And if you're having trouble with any of the exhibits, let us know because we can print out anything and everything that you need, okay? So if it gets frustrating at any point, just let me know and I'll make the parties print anything out that you need, okay? All right, thank you. You can now go to deliberate.
Have fun. All right, guys. Did you guys vote? What are our thoughts on the defense's closing argument? 53% says horrible, 24% says so-so, 12% lost me at times, mostly okay.
The verdict forms
12%?
before they go back as well.
Have my full attention.
The laptop is coming from IT, so if you want to wait for that too for me, so just so you can make sure the laptop is clean and everything, all your exhibits are on there, and then that will go back to the jurors, okay? All right, we'll be in recess then.
All rise.
Oh, good. All right, how long do you think? Well, first of all, I guess we do another poll. Now that we got closing arguments in. Start a poll. I'm just going to make it very general because he does have a few charges, but Defendant is guilty, not guilty, might be mistrial. All right, guys. A poll has been created. The defendant, Mr. Brendan, who testified on the stand and gave his side of the story. Do you think he's guilty, not guilty? Or do you think there might be a mistrial? Because people might have a disagreement. So again, the jury has to Remy. The jury has to find him guilty of 2 homicides for the murders of his wife, Christine Banfield, and Joseph Ryan, who was the stranger that was lured in by him and the au pair that he was having an affair with. There's also has to be a charge of, child endangerment because he brought his child into the house during this confrontation and then left her in the basement without locking the door. Although somehow the dog was able to escape the basement and moan and groan and howl during the 911 call, in the first 911 call. Now, they have to have 12 jurors that agree unanimously. They had 4 alternates that's been excused, but they're still on standby just in case the 12 jurors, if something happens to one of them. And they have to find that it was, willful, deliberate. Oh gosh, what is that noise?
Murder trial.
Stand, Brendan Ban.
Willful, willful, deliberate, and premeditated. So, I wasn't really around if they were talking about the lesser included. Probably not, right? Probably no lesser includes. I think it's just all or nothing, first degree murder. So he's probably going to be looking at life. While Juliana, on the other hand, the au pair who was his co-conspirator, she took a plea deal for manslaughter and is looking at max 10 years with time served, which is, in the scheme of things, yeah, it does sound like a joke. 10 years. And she's fairly young. She would be out in her probably mid-30s or even sooner than that. But she for sure will be deported back to Brazil, though. All right, you think 3.5 deliberations? I don't know which way this will go. I don't want to say it because I don't know. I don't really believe in jinxing myself, but I don't know. For court cases, like I think it looks really bad for the defendant, and I think he's pretty fucked. We'll have to see, because I mean, honestly, if the defense team didn't bring on the whole team of homicide detectives to testify, and the state wasn't able to get out information that was helpful for them, then I would think that, okay, well, if the jury didn't believe the au pair's testimony, then it might not look good, because the state didn't call someone that was like a cell phone person, more detectives to talk about the evidence and all that. But she was able to get testimony from that during the defense's witnesses. I don't know what the defense was thinking. I felt like, man, the witnesses that they were putting on were helping the state. Crazy. All right, guys. So, new update with Corey Richards, new allegations of witness intimidation. That video has been posted yesterday, so feel free to check it out. As for this trial, if you guys did not watch the trial every day, I will probably be doing a major recap about this trial from day 1 to day 10. And yeah, I mean, this trial was pretty wild. The only reason why I got into it was because I was doing research for a different video, and then Vinny Paulson popped up. And he was like, yeah, there's this case where this man had an affair with the au pair, and then like they went on this fetish app and created this fake account for the wife so she could be murdered. They lured a stranger in. 2 people were murdered. I was like, what is up with this case? So that's the only reason why it really caught my interest initially. But then I listened to opening statements. I was like, oh wow, it's just as crazy as what was being told. React to puppy videos on YouTube. Oh my god. I do that on my Instagram already. I get all the pupperinos. Although, because my Instagram algorithm thinks Remy is not a corgi and thinks that he's like a border collie or sheltie, I keep getting shelties and border collies on my Instagram now. They think he looks like Lassie. Yeah, I don't know. So right now, in Fairfax, Virginia, it's actually almost 1 o'clock. So I wouldn't be surprised if the jury's going to take a lunch break. Hey, don't mess with the carpet. They're going to take their lunch break. But it's possible that they might have a verdict today, or it's possible they might come back on Monday and give us a verdict then, or maybe afterwards. But I think it could be today. I was gonna go and take a nap because I'm super tired, but I don't want to miss a verdict, so I'll probably be like, maybe like, lay on the couch with one eye open. But guys, thank you so much for watching the trial together. The next trial that we are going to be watching, from beginning to end, Corey Richards trial, which is going to be happening in about 2 to 3 weeks from now. So you guys are not caught up with that case. We do have a Corey Richards playlist. That is the one about the Utah mother who is also a book author. She wrote a children's book to help with her children deal with grief. But lo and behold, after she had her, what is happening down there? After she had her interview with the news station, there was news of her getting arrested for the murder of her husband. And on top of that, there's a bunch of financial stuff happening. All right, guys, I will see you guys later. Have your notifications on. I will put the notification on Discord when the verdict is out, and we will watch it together. Hopefully, I'm not asleep on the couch and I miss the verdict. If I do miss it, which I shouldn't miss it, I will for sure watch it with you guys at some point, but have your notifications on Discord. That's usually the most reliable way. That's how you guys get the heads up that I'm about to go live. And other than that, guys, thank you so much. Your favorite author. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a good one. Miss Longy, see ya. Shun, to see you. Rain, good to see you. It was good to see you as well. Nacho, I hope you have a good one. Bye, Alice. Bye, Kurt. Bye, Aaron. Bye, Taxi. I will see you guys when the verdict comes out. And again, I'll try to do a recap video. Oh my God, he is yapping. All right, y'all. I'll see you guys soon. I'll be back. Later. Or maybe Monday.